Chapter 298. On the 10 futons in front of the bronze cauldron. 10 white beams of light soared into the air, bringing with them faint fluctuations. The next moment, the bronze cauldron, which was located in the middle of the 10 futons and within the defensive array, began to buzz and tremble, and then its lid opened slightly. A variety of pills were mixed together, and an extremely rich pill fragrance spread out with the wind. That fragrance made one's limbs and bones feel as if they were relaxing after smelling it. Some people, just by smelling the pill fragrance, felt that the qi in their body seemed to have become more active. For a time, many blazing gazes were nailed to the bronze cauldron. But they also knew that it was impossible to obtain the bronze cauldron. No one could break that defensive array, and even experts of the divine dwelling stage could not forcibly take it away. Their only thought was to be able to obtain as many precious pills as possible. After the lid of the cauldron was opened, dozens of rays of light also spread out and then dispersed. The rays of light fell into the hands of the 10 people. Taking a closer look, they were pills, and each person was given a few. It's the blood qi pill for tempering the body. It's the yang gathering pill for practicing a fire attribute cultivation method. It's the blue marking pill with a strong healing effect. Among the 10 people, some were happy and some were sad. After all, the distribution of pills was random, and it was only based on each person's talent and aptitude that different levels of pills were distributed. These pills were all of the spirit level. But even if they were only spirit pills because of the foundation of the Void Sword sect, they were not ordinary spirit pills, but top-grade spirit pills, and the effect was several times better than ordinary spirit pills. The 10 disciples sighed slightly, but they were not too disappointed. After all, with their talent, it was already considered good to be able to obtain top-grade spirit pills. So this is the way to obtain opportunities. Yi Guchen, who was watching from the side, finally understood. But it was also because of this that he was even more curious about his own talent and aptitude. After these 10 people, the disciples of the 7 major forces came forward one after another. But most of them, without exception, had ordinary aptitude and emitted white beams of light. What they obtained were all top-grade spirit pills. Then, a beautiful figure in pink landed on the futon. It was Zither Fairy. Yi Guchen was a little curious and was paying attention. Hee, I'm interested too. On the other side, Pan Shuelyan spoke. She twisted her snake-like waist and actually landed on the praying mat at the same time. Clearly, Pan Shuelyan and Zither Fairy were at loggerheads in the consonant's divine palace. Seeing Zither Fairy step forward to test her aptitude, Pan Shuelyan naturally wanted to compete with her. Facing Pan Shuelyan's provocative gaze, Zither Fairy's long eyelashes drooped slightly, and she ignored it. Damn bitch. Wait until the talent test results. Let's see how arrogant you are. Seeing Zither Fairy's indifferent manner, Pan Shuelyan viciously said in her heart. Buzz. The 10 praying mats were all filled with people. Soon after, pillars of light soared into the sky. It's a red pillar of light. At that moment, everyone cried out in surprise because they saw that what rose from Pan Shuelyan's side was not a white pillar of light, but a light red pillar of light. Compared to the monotonous white pillar of light from before, this light red pillar of light was very conspicuous. Hee, I do have some talent. Pan Shuelyan covered her red lips with her jade-like hand as she laughed proudly. However, before she could laugh, her face instantly froze. Boom. On Zither Fairy's side, a dark red pillar of light soared into the sky. Its aura was even stronger than Pan Shuelyan's. Pan Shuelyan's face stiffened as her face turned purple. She originally wanted to suppress Zither Fairy and compete with her. But now, everyone could see who had higher talent. Buzz. Buzz. The bronze cauldron in the middle trembled as elixirs flew out and landed in the hands of the 10 people. Among the 10 people, other than Zither Fairy and Pan Shuelyan, the rest were still in the white pillar of light. Naturally, they could only obtain elixirs. It's the spirit elixir. Pan Shuelyan focused her gaze and realized that she had 3 spirit elixirs in her hands. The spirit elixir was a treasure elixir. Among the 7 major forces, only the true elites could obtain it. The quality of the spirit elixir in the bronze cauldron was clearly several times better than the spirit elixirs that Yiguchen and the others obtained. However, at this moment, everyone's gaze landed on Zither Fairy. Could this be the heavenly soul elixir? Zither Fairy looked at the elixir in her hand. Although there was only one, the faint ripple that it emitted was 10 times stronger than the spirit elixir. Damn slut. Pan Shuoyan's face darkened. She did not say a word and retreated with a cold expression. Zither Fairy was very satisfied with the elixir. After keeping it, she landed beside Yiguchen. Congratulations, elder sister. Mu Xingzu smiled. Zither Fairy pursed her lips and smiled. She turned to look at Yiguchen and asked with a trace of curiosity in her eyes, Zither Fairy wants to know what kind of elixir young master Yi obtained. Yiguchen smiled but did not say a word. He did not know either. On the other side, when Pan Shuoyan heard this, she said in a strange tone, He's a crippled person. It's hard to say if he can activate the Pillar of Light. After being defeated by Zither Fairy, Pan Shuoyan was extremely unhappy. Naturally, she would say a few words. Yiguchen did not care about her. I don't believe it. In the Sword Pavilion, you relied on the enlightened sword heart to obtain such a harvest. In the Pill Hall, it's not a competition of sword Dao talent, it's a competition of talent. You're a crippled person. How can you activate the Pillar of Light? Pan Shuoyan guessed in disdain. After the two of them, there were a few people who were worth paying attention to who went up to take the test. Prince Yuanyi stepped out. At the same time, Yuan Mie also stepped out. The grudge between the two of them could not be resolved. It was a death grudge. In the end, the two of them activated the red Pillar of Light. However, Prince Yuanyi and Pan Shuoyan were the same. They were only faintly red. On the other hand, Yuan Mie's color was darker than Zither Fairy's. It was obvious that his talent was stronger than Zither Fairy's. After that, Shinta Miao, Murong Ditian and the others stepped out at the same time. Murong Ditian's gaze was cold and provocative as he looked at Yiguchen. Yiguchen ignored him. Boom. The two of them also activated the red Pillar of Light with their talent and strength. The degree of activation was similar to Yuan Mie's. After obtaining the supreme elixir, Murong Ditian retreated. At the same time, he looked at Yiguchen and said, Yiguchen, why don't you go up to take the test? Weren't you very impressive in the Sword Pavilion? Or do you know that you don't have the ability to activate the Pillar of Light? We'll see in a while, Yiguchen replied faintly. You're so stubborn. Let's see how you're going to deal with this later. Murong Ditian's face darkened. After them, the rest of the people also took the test. After that, Nie Ling, Mo Juechen, Fang Qin, Chen Yi, Jiyan, Jiling, Bai Zichen, Wang Xiaotian and the others all activated the green Pillar of Light that was of a higher grade than the red Pillar of Light. Their harvest was also extraordinary. They all obtained supreme grade supreme elixirs. Moreover, it wasn't just one. This kind of harvest was definitely not small. It made Ji Ling and the others happy. Even Bai Zichen, Wang Xiaotian and the others, who were humiliated in the Sword Pavilion, had a trace of a smile on their faces. Then, they looked at Yiguchen with playful gazes. Yiguchen's eyes flickered as he stepped forward. On the other side, Xian Hao also stepped forward at the same time. Due to the fact that almost everyone present had finished their test, it was rather strange that only Yiguchen and Xian Hao had stepped out. Everyone held their breaths because Yiguchen and Xian Hao could be said to be two extremes. One was Xian Hao, who had the highest talent and cultivation among everyone here. The other was Yiguchen, who couldn't even compare to the Qi refinement realm. This kind of contrast was too dramatic. Therefore, it attracted everyone's attention. Xian Hao glanced at Yiguchen indifferently. Do you want to humiliate yourself so badly? Yiguchen replied with a glance. I'll return those words back to you. At this moment, everyone's gazes gathered. Between the two of them, the wind and clouds surged. Chapter 299. At this moment, the people from the 7 major forces were looking at the two people who were walking towards the praying mats. They didn't have much suspense about Xian Hao. They knew that he had extraordinary talent. However, Yiguchen's cultivation was crippled. This was a very interesting fact. Many people even doubted whether he would be able to trigger the light beam. Yiguchen, with your talent in the sword Dao, you can indeed show off in the sword pavilion. However, your true qi is crippled and you have lost your talent. How are you going to get the recognition of the pill hall and obtain the opportunity? Murong Ditian's expression was cold. At the same time, he was looking forward to what would happen next. It was because he was too sullen. In the past, Murong Ditian had always been suppressed by Yiguchen. Even though Yiguchen's cultivation was crippled now, in the sword pavilion, Murong Ditian was like a clown who was being toyed with. It made Murong Ditian feel extremely embarrassed. Murong Ditian couldn't wait to see Yiguchen embarrass himself. Ji Yen, Crown Prince Yuani, Pan Shuelyan and the others had the same thought as Murong Ditian. Even in the inner court, Bai Zichen, Wang Xiaotian, Li Lingxiao and the others didn't say anything on the surface, nor did they say anything sarcastic. However, in their hearts, they wanted to see Yiguchen fail and embarrass himself. Among them, Bai Zichen and Wang Xiaoyan had the most extreme thoughts. Needless to say, Wang Xiaoyan almost fought with Yiguchen to the death. As for Bai Zichen, he was extremely prideful and cared a lot about his reputation. Previously, when Yiguchen asked him in an inexplicable tone whether he was the one who left the mark on the one-sword cliff, Bai Zichen felt a little uneasy. After what happened in the sword pavilion, Bai Zichen's attitude towards Yiguchen changed from indifference to hatred. Yiguchen, although I don't know if you know the truth about the one-sword cliff, can you still create a miracle this time? Bai Zichen squinted his eyes and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Senior brother Yi. Mu Xingzhu and the others also felt their hearts clench. They were extremely nervous. Although they believed in Yiguchen, the pill hall wasn't testing one's talent in the sword Dao. It was testing one's innate talent. As for Yiguchen, everyone knew that his qi and blood had been squeezed dry during his battle with Gu Xiaoyang. He had lost all his true qi, and his talent was long gone. This was also what Mu Xingzhu and the others were worried about. At this moment, many people, regardless of whether they were on Yiguchen's side or his enemies, unconsciously held their breaths, waiting for the moment the result would be revealed. Xianhao's expression was indifferent and calm, as if he didn't have the slightest bit of worry. As the top genius of the Limitless Sword sect, he had the right to be so confident. Yiguchen, I do admire your courage to stand up, but this courage will only embarrass you in the end. Xianhao glanced indifferently at Yiguchen before his gaze landed on the futon. At that moment, the entire pill hall fell into a dead silence. In such silence, everyone stared at Xianhao without blinking. They were afraid that they would miss a single change. As for the disciples of the Limitless Sword sect, they opened their eyes wide. They wanted to know how strong Xianhao's innate talent was. Finally, after a few breaths' time, an extremely vigorous and vast golden light pillar soared into the sky from the futon. Boom! A powerful fluctuation exploded. The golden light pillar seemed to have pierced through the heavens, crossing the heavens and the earth. At this moment, everyone outside the pill hall was extremely shocked. An uproar spread out like a tidal wave. Gold, it's a golden light pillar. A golden light pillar that has never appeared before. Xianhao's innate talent is actually so strong. At this moment, the disciples of the 7 major forces opened their mouths wide. They couldn't hide the shock in their hearts. Xianhao's innate talent is so strong. This, even Yeling, Mo Juechen, Qin Yi, Fang Chen, and the rest of the geniuses were shocked when they saw the magnificent golden light pillar. Even with their innate talent, they could only trigger the green light pillar. This meant that Xianhao's innate talent was even stronger than theirs. Xianhao. Murong Ditian clenched his fists tightly. There was an extremely complicated expression on his face. He knew that his innate talent was far from Xianhao's. However, as long as I can humiliate Yiguchen and make him miserable, it's enough. Murong Ditian's face was cold. Pan Shuelyan and the others were also shocked. Then, they couldn't help but look at Yiguchen. Their eyes were filled with mockery. As the golden light pillar soared into the sky, the bronze cauldron in the middle also trembled like never before. After that, A resplendent pill soared into the sky like a star and landed in Xianhao's hand. That fluctuation, it's the quasi-sage elixir. It was unknown who it was that let out an extremely shocking roar, and the tone of the roar was extremely fiery. Quasi-sage elixir. Everyone's gaze fell on Xianhao's hand. Their eyes were red and burning. 9 revolutions true spiritual elixir. Not bad. The elixir in Xianhao's hand was as round as jade. There were 9 runes around it. Quasi-sage elixir, 9 revolutions true spiritual elixir. 9 revolutions true spiritual elixir. Rumor has it that after consuming it, the genuine qi in one's sea of qi will double. Everyone's gaze was filled with envy and desire as they looked at the elixir in Xianhao's hand. That was a quasi-sage elixir. Even for Chen Yi, Nye Ling, Fong Chen and the other geniuses, it was almost impossible for them to get a quasi-sage elixir in their own forces. That was because the quasi-sage elixir was too precious. Although everyone's gaze was filled with desire at that moment, their rationality told them that if they wanted to snatch Xianhao's elixir, it would be no different from courting death. Although Xianhao was arrogant and aloof, he had obtained a quasi-sage elixir. However, at this moment, he had obtained an extremely precious quasi-sage elixir. Hence, he could not help but curl his lips into a faint smile. He turned to look at Yiguchen. Not only Xianhao, everyone's gaze turned towards Yiguchen. With a gem like Xianhao in front of him, everyone couldn't help but look at Yiguchen with pity. Yiguchen is really pitiful. He actually encountered Xianhao. Even if his genuine qi wasn't crippled, even if he triggered the green light pillar, he's still like a firefly compared to the moon when compared to Xianhao. That's right. Even if Yiguchen was in his peak condition, I'm afraid he wouldn't be able to achieve Xianhao's current result. Many discussions started to spread out. Yiguchen, you can indeed show off in the sword pavilion. But now, let's see how you're going to be so arrogant. Pan Shuelian didn't hesitate and mocked Yiguchen, because she was infuriated by Yiguchen previously. Yiguchen, I'll wait for your miserable moment. Prince Yuanyi revealed a smile that he hadn't seen for a long time. Yiguchen, if you can still overturn the heavens in the pill hall today, I, Murong Ditian, will crawl out of here. The veins on Murong Ditian's temples were throbbing. He couldn't wait to see Yiguchen's miserable state. Yiguchen's eyes moved and looked at Murong Ditian. Are you feeling guilty? I've already said so. Don't tell me you don't want to take the test anymore? Murong Ditian thought that Yiguchen was feeling guilty when he saw this. His face revealed a trace of satisfaction from taking revenge. No, I just feel sorry for you. Yiguchen shook his head slightly. You're still so stubborn even now. Pan Shuelian bit her tongue and glanced at Yiguchen in disdain. Yiguchen didn't say anything. Actually, he didn't know how talented he was. After all, his qi was sealed. However, Yiguchen's pride made him fearless. Yiguchen, I told you not to humiliate yourself. Xianhao said with a condescending tone. Ridiculous. Yiguchen suddenly stepped into the praying mat. In an instant, the heavens and earth became deathly silent. Chapter 300. At this moment, the air around the pill hall seemed to have frozen. No one dared to breathe loudly. They were all staring at Yiguchen. Although most people didn't think that Yiguchen had the ability to activate the light pillar, Yiguchen was still a sword master. After all, Yiguchen was a sword master. He had created many miracles. Hence, everyone was curious. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths. As time passed, a total of 10 breaths had passed. However, the praying mat that Yiguchen was on still didn't move. It was as if it didn't have any effect. Yiguchen, to think that you would be in such a sorry state today. When Murong Ditian, who was staring at Yiguchen, saw this, he suddenly started laughing loudly. This laughter spread throughout the entire pill hall, allowing everyone to hear it clearly. Murong Ditian had lost his composure and laughed loudly. He had been suppressed for too long. Previously, he had been suppressed by Yiguchen. The miracles that Yiguchen had created caused Murong Ditian to feel a little nervous. When he said that he would crawl out, he was a little impulsive. After he said that, Murong Ditian felt a little regretful. At the same time, he felt a little nervous. After all, who knew if Yiguchen would be able to shock everyone again? However, the current result made Murong Ditien heave a sigh of relief. At the same time, he laughed without any hesitation. He hadn't experienced such a carefree feeling for a long time. As they saw Murong Ditien laughing heartily, the surrounding disciples were somewhat surprised. However, when they turned to look at Yiguchen, there was a deeper sense of pity in their eyes. On the praying mat, Yiguchen frowned slightly. When he stepped on the praying mat, he did feel a faint fluctuation that was emitted from the praying mat. It was as if it was scanning his body. However, that fluctuation didn't just scan him once. It continuously scanned him, as if it couldn't confirm Yiguchen's talent. Why is that? Yiguchen was puzzled and curious at the same time. He was certain that everyone, including Xian Hao and the others, had only scanned the area once. That was why the pillar of light had appeared immediately. Could it be that with my talent and aptitude, this praying mat can't detect it on the first try? Yiguchen was puzzled. At this moment, a faint white glow finally appeared on the praying mat. It's a white pillar of light. It's a white pillar of light. However, for someone like Yiguchen, who has lost all of his Jinqi, to be able to activate the pillar of light is already pretty good. Some people laughed out loud when they saw the white pillar of light on the praying mat. Murong Ditien's laughter still didn't weaken, and his eyes were filled with carefreeness and disdain. So what if he had triggered the white pillar of light? That was only the most ordinary aptitude, which was even inferior to his red pillar of light, let alone compared to Xian Hao and the others. White light pillar, Xian Hao didn't mock him too much. However, that was meaningful and playful. Senior brother Yi. Mu Xingzu clenched her fists tightly. She didn't believe that Yiguchen's talent was only so. Sigh, he has lost all of his Jinqi. It's already not easy for him to trigger the pillar of light, Jiling sighed. As for Bai Zichen and the others, the corners of their mouths curled up into a smile. Yiguchen had already been in the limelight in the Sword Pavilion. If he was still in the same situation in the Pill Hall, it would really make people unhappy. Just when everyone thought that the dust had settled, Yiguchen realized that the ripples emitted by the praying mat had seeped into his bones and tendons, as if it wanted to investigate more carefully. After a few breaths of time, the white pillar of light suddenly turned red. It wasn't a faint red, but a deep red that was as dense as the setting sun. The change in the praying mat's pillar of light was out of everyone's expectations. They opened their eyes wide and looked at the pillar of light that turned from white to red. How is this possible? The group of people was dumbfounded. Even Murong Ditien's laughter had weakened a lot. The corners of his eyes twitched slightly. Could it be that the perfect physical body has been detected? Yiguchen guessed in his heart. After that, the ripples from the praying mat seeped into his sea of qi again. Although his sea of qi was sealed by the spirit-devouring insect, the ripples still seeped in. The 1,000-feet sea of qi had been discovered. Boom! The deep red pillar of light changed again. It turned into an extremely dense green color. Green pillar of light. When the glaring green pillar of light soared into the sky, everyone's expressions changed. Everyone present did not know what kind of expression was on their faces. Shock, horror, doubt, puzzlement, all sorts of emotions were present. How is this possible? Nieling, Mo Juechen, Jiyen, Fong Chen, Bai Zichen, Jiling and the others opened their mouths, but no words came out. Yiguchen's performance was already on par with them. Is this still a person whose true qi is crippled? A prodigy swallowed his saliva and said with a dry voice. As for Murong Ditien, his laughter was already very forced. Perhaps it was because he had laughed for too long, but the corners of his mouth were stiff and he couldn't retract them. However, it wasn't over yet, when the ripples from the praying mat swept across Yiguchen's brain. His soul power, which had yet to form a sea of consciousness, was already more vigorous than a divine soul expert. At that moment, it roared. Buzz. The deep green pillar of light shook violently again. Then, under everyone's astonished gaze, it turned golden. It was as golden as the sun. Boom! The entire pill hall shook. That golden pillar of light was even brighter than Xian Hao. It connected the heavens and the earth like a pillar that supported the heavens. Impossible! Even Xian Hao couldn't remain calm. His gaze was fixed on Yi Guqin's body. This person whose true qi was crippled, and who was even weaker than a qi refinement realm martial artist, actually had the same talent as him. Xian Hao couldn't believe it. As for Murong Ditian, his laughter was as hoarse as a spasm. It was hard for him to make any sound. His eyes were filled with madness and disbelief. However, this still wasn't the end. When the ripples from the praying mat gathered on the thunder calamity sword in Yi Guqin's dantian, in an instant, the praying mat seemed to be unable to withstand the power and started to burn. Just as the praying mat was burning, an incomparably frightening fluctuation suddenly erupted. The extremely dazzling purplish gold pillar of light was like a dragon roaring in the 9 heavens. Accompanied by an illusory purplish gold divine dragon's shadow, the purplish gold pillar of light shot straight to the heavens. At this moment, everyone in the void sword realm, no matter where they were, as long as they raised their heads slightly, they could see the roaring purplish gold divine dragon in the void. The purplish gold pillar of light shot across the heavens. Everyone was shocked. Everyone was stunned. Everyone couldn't believe it. The purplish gold pillar of light represented Yi Guqin's talent. It surpassed everyone, and it even surpassed Xian Hao. He was worthy of being the king of heaven's pride. At this moment, the pill hall shook violently. The heavens and the earth were boiling. Chapter 301. The purplish gold light pillar was accompanied by a divine dragon, and it stretched across the sky for a long time. Yi Guqin stood in the middle of the purplish gold light pillar like a prodigy, and a terrifying pressure spread in all directions. It wasn't pressure from his cultivation. It came from Yi Guqin's monstrous talent. A perfect physical body, 1,000 feet sea of energy, a monstrous soul power, and the sword of lightning tribulation. Because of all these, Yi Guqin's talent was judged to be superior. Even the praying mat that was used for the test directly burned, exploded, and turned into a pile of ashes. However, this wasn't all of Yi Guqin's talent. One had to know that Yi Guqin was a 7th grade prodigy, and he had the innate sword embryo. It was only because the innate sword embryo was taken away by Gu Xiaoyang that it was missing. However, if the innate sword embryo wasn't taken away, Yi Guqin wouldn't even need the sword of lightning tribulation, and he would be able to activate the purplish gold light pillar directly. After all, even in ancient times, 7th grade prodigies were extremely rare. This was Yi Guqin's top-grade talent. Everyone stared blankly at the purplish gold light pillar, and they couldn't make a sound for a long time. As for Murong Ditian, he didn't know what he was feeling at this moment. He opened his mouth, but he couldn't say anything. The light emitted by the purplish gold light pillar shone on Murong Ditian's twisted and stiff face, and it was hard to see what expression he had. No. How is this possible? His true qi is crippled. How is this possible? Pan Shuelian looked as if she was struck by lightning, and her delicate body trembled slightly. Her pretty face was already pale, and her rosy lips couldn't stop trembling. She stared blankly at the purplish gold light pillar that made her feel suffocated. That was a talent that even Xian Hao couldn't activate. Ji Yan, Prince Yuani, Fang Chen, Nie Ling, and Mo Juechen, and the rest also couldn't make a sound. On the other side, Mu Xingzu, Fairy Qin, and the rest covered their mouths with their jade-like hands. They might have had confidence in Yi Guqin, but they never thought that Yi Guqin's talent would be so monstrous. It was completely beyond their expectations. Yi Guqin is really... Ji Ling was so shocked that she was speechless. Yi Guqin's position in her heart had risen to the same level as Yan Wushuang, Xian Hao, and Gu Zun. Even though Yi Guqin was not as strong as them right now. As for Bai Zichen and the others, they were dumbstruck and didn't know what kind of expression they should show. But Yi Guqin was already so monstrous in the sword pavilion. Why is it the same in the pill hall? The corners of Bai Zichen's eyes were twitching, and the hands hidden in his sleeves were tightly clenched, as if he was unable to accept Yi Guqin stealing the limelight. Yi Guqin, who was inside the purple gold pillar of light, ignored the complicated gazes around him. He was wondering what grade of pill he would be able to obtain. Would it be a sage to be? Not far away from Yiguchen, Xianhao's expression was completely frozen. His temperament was extremely detached. Even though Yiguchen's talent was in front of him, he still felt a little astonished and couldn't believe it. However, his expression didn't change much. The killing intent in his eyes was as cold as an ice abyss. No. Cheating. I know. Yiguchen, you cheated. I saw with my own eyes that you were struck by Gu Xiaoyang's technique in the barren plains, and your sea of qi was destroyed. How is this possible? How can you still have such talent? You must have used some special technique. Murong Ditian, who had been absent-minded, suddenly thought of something. His finger trembled as he pointed at Yiguchen. His expression was twisted with madness and malevolence. He couldn't accept that Yiguchen still had such talent. That's right. There must be something wrong with the praying mat. Look, isn't the praying mat burnt to ashes? Maybe something went wrong. The astonishment on Pan Shuoyan's face also turned into suspicion and disbelief. She didn't believe that the trash Yiguchen in her eyes could still have such talent. As the two of them spoke, the rest of the people who were enemies of Yiguchen also revealed their doubts. That's right. Yiguchen must have used some method that we don't know about. That's right. Otherwise, how could someone who isn't even in the qi refinement realm have such talent? Many voices of suspicion spoke, as though they were trying to cover up their astonishment. At this moment, many doubtful gazes were fixed on Yiguchen. It was as though they wanted to see through him. Yiguchen faced the many gazes and sneered indifferently. Why would the sword demon need to explain his actions to others? Yiguchen was disdainful. Just at this moment, the illusory divine dragon that coiled around the purple-gold light pillar roared towards the sky, shaking the 9 heavens. After that, the illusory purple-gold divine dragon broke away from the purple-gold light pillar and charged towards the bronze cauldron in the middle. Finally, under everyone's gazes, it completely merged into the cauldron. The elite disciples of the 7 superpowers were all puzzled. No elixir came out. Yiguchen indeed used some tricks. Murong Ditian's eyes, which were originally filled with a trace of madness, were now filled with hope. That's right. No elixir came out. Yiguchen's talent is indeed fake. Without any elixir, this test is meaningless. Let's see how Yiguchen is going to deal with this. Seeing that no elixir came out from the cauldron, the majority of the people were even more convinced of Murong Ditian and Pan Shuoyan's words. Yiguchen was using some tricks. I don't believe it. Mu Xingzu shook her head and bit her moist lips. She believed that Yiguchen was disdainful to use such tricks. Buzz buzz. Just as everyone was discussing, the bronze cauldron that had been silent suddenly started to shake violently. Boom, boom, boom. It was as if something was violently hitting the cauldron. Could it be? Hearing the clear sound of the collision, everyone who was discussing immediately shut their mouths. Their gazes were glued to the bronze cauldron and they were unable to shift their gazes away. Boom. Following the sound of a huge bell, a forceful elixir came out from the cauldron. It was like a small sun as it forcefully broke out from the cauldron. The ripples that it emitted were even stronger than the 9 revolutions true spiritual elixir that Xianhao had obtained previously. As the light dissipated, a translucent elixir appeared in everyone's vision. That elixir was like a translucent gemstone, and within it, there was an existence that looked like a baby sitting cross-legged. That was naturally not a real baby, but an elixir that had shown its power. Oh my God, it can't be. Could that be the heavenly soul infant soul elixir that was recorded in the ancient alchemy book? Sage elixir. The heavenly soul infant soul elixir is a true sage elixir. It is rumored that a heavenly soul infant soul elixir can allow one to form a sea of consciousness and even increase one's spiritual power to the 9 transformations level. A single pill could directly create a proud son of heaven with a divine soul transformation like Xianhao. Who wouldn't be envious? Who wouldn't be crazy about it? At this moment, everyone who saw the heavenly soul infant soul elixir, including the usually aloof Xianhao, couldn't suppress their desire to devour it. Everyone had gone completely crazy. Chapter 302. The entire outside of the pill hall was filled with deep panting sounds. It was the uncontrollable desire when they saw the sage elixir. A sage elixir. Even the 7 major forces wouldn't be able to take out such an elixir. Even a quasi-sage elixir was extremely rare. Otherwise, the 9 revolutions true spiritual elixir that Xian Hao obtained wouldn't have caused so many people to be jealous. However, compared to the value of the heavenly soul infant soul elixir, the 9 revolutions true spiritual elixir was nothing. At this moment, the heavenly soul infant soul elixir was floating above the bronze cauldron. Within the translucent elixir, a lifelike infant child was sitting cross-legged. Facing such an elixir, even Xian Hao couldn't ignore it. There was a trace of passion in his eyes. However, everyone knew that since Yi Guchen could draw out the elixir, it proved that he didn't use any unorthodox methods. Instead, his talent was truly recognized by the praying mat. Thinking of this, everyone looked at Yi Guchen with extreme astonishment. It was as if they were looking at a monster. His blood and qi were exhausted, and his true qi was crippled. However, his talent was still able to suppress Xian Hao. If Yi Guchen wasn't a monster, then what was he? As for Murong Ditian, Pan Shuelyan and the others, they already felt ashamed. Murong Ditian stared blankly at the sage elixir that was emitting vigorous waves. That medicinal pill was like a slap, ruthlessly slapping his face. Just now, he still had a trace of hope and slandered Yi Guchen. He thought that Yi Guchen must have used some unorthodox methods to draw out the purple gold light pillar. However, not to mention the others, even the disciples of the Limitless Sword sect were looking at Murong Ditian with a trace of pity and sympathy. It was a gaze that looked at a loser. Those gazes were like steel needles that pierced Murong Ditian's heart. It made him feel as if there was a blade on his back. Murong Ditian, you said that you want to crawl out of here? Yi Guchen tilted his head slightly and looked at Murong Ditian. Hearing Yi Guchen's words, Murong Ditian's entire body shook, and the blood in his heart surged up to his throat uncontrollably. He was so angered by Yi Guchen that he spat out a mouthful of blood from his heart. Yi Guchen? Do. Murong Ditian's finger trembled as he pointed at Yi Guchen. He was clenching his teeth so hard that they were about to shatter. The veins on his temples were popping out and throbbing with all their might. It was as if his veins were about to explode. Because Murong Ditian was truly filled with hatred. At that moment, the surrounding disciples of the other forces were also looking at Murong Ditian with ridicule in their eyes. As a prodigy who had been famous for a long time, if Murong Ditian were to really crawl out like a dog, that would truly be a joke. Pooh! Murong Ditian, who was both mentally and physically exhausted, finally reached his limit. He was unable to endure it any longer. After vomiting out a large mouthful of blood, he directly fainted on the ground. Even though he had fainted, his face was still filled with a twisted expression of unwillingness. I have already said that I feel sorry for you. Seeing this, Yi Guchen shook his head. The surrounding people looked at Murong Ditian, who had fainted from anger, and sighed. Perhaps only Yi Guchen had the ability to make a heaven's pride so angry that he fainted. Yi Guchen, you can't even protect yourself now. Do you still have the leeway to pity others? Just at that moment, Xian Hao, who had been silent all this while, spoke. This sentence seemed to have once again evoked the greed and desire in the hearts of everyone present. After all, the divine elixir was too rare, and could be said to be a priceless treasure. No matter how many crystal jades one had, one couldn't buy it. Thus, apart from Mu Xingzu, Chu Qingqi, Chen Yi, Jiling, and a few others who had a good relationship with Yi Guchen, the rest of the people present were all divine elixirs. No matter if they had any enmity with Yi Guchen or not, the rest of them were all drooling with greed because of the divine elixir. Treasures moved people's hearts. Moreover, Yi Guchen wasn't Xian Hao. Although his talent was shocking, he wasn't powerful enough to intimidate everyone present. Yi Guchen furrowed his brows tightly when he saw the many pairs of eyes that had turned scarlet and thirsty in an instant. However, just as he was thinking of a way to break out of this situation, the bronze cauldron began to tremble again. What? The cauldron is trembling again? Could it be that another divine elixir is about to come out? Oh my god, Yiguchen's opportunity is really terrifying. After feeling the bronze cauldron tremble, the restless people temporarily calmed down. This was because they really wanted to know what kind of divine elixir would appear. Could it be another divine elixir? Someone guessed with a fiery tone. Just as everyone's gazes were focused on the cauldron, the bronze cauldron suddenly released a ray of light and directly sucked the nascent soul elixir, which was suspended in mid-air, back into the cauldron. This scene was out of everyone's expectations. They stared blankly at the bronze cauldron and were speechless for a long time. Damn it, the divine elixir is gone. How is this possible? It has already been spat out. How can it be taken back? Everyone was wailing and cursing loudly as if it was their own divine elixir that was taken back. Even Yiguchen was stunned by this scene. He couldn't understand what was going on. Could it be that Yiguchen is really faking it? Otherwise, why would the divine elixir be taken back? Pan Shuelyan couldn't help but doubt. However, because Yiguchen had brought about too many twists and turns, even with Pan Shuelyan's narrow-mindedness and harshness, she didn't dare to casually talk about it. She was afraid that she would be slapped in the face in the next moment. At this moment, the pill hall was silent. Everyone held their breaths. Only the bronze cauldron continued to tremble as if it was about to undergo some changes. Yiguchen frowned slightly. Suddenly, a loud and clear dragon roar spread out from the cauldron. Everyone was shocked to see that the illusory purple-gold divine dragon that Yiguchen had summoned earlier was coiling around the cauldron as if it was brewing something. Rumble! There seemed to be thunder roaring in the bronze cauldron. The defensive formation around the cauldron emitted a dazzling light as if it was desperately trying to suppress something. However, the defensive formation was counterattacked by the illusory purple-gold divine dragon. They collided and were destroyed. Could it be? Yiguchen's eyes suddenly flashed with a bright light. If his guess wasn't wrong, boom. Just as Yiguchen was guessing, the bronze cauldron that had been silent for thousands of years suddenly rose from the ground and broke through the defensive formation's restriction. This scene was out of everyone's expectations. The eyes of all the surrounding spectators almost popped out of their sockets. The bronze cauldron broke the formation on its own? It should be said that even experts of the divine dwelling stage couldn't forcibly break through the defensive formation. It was precisely because of this that the cauldron had always existed here and no one could take it away. But now, the bronze cauldron had soared into the air and then shrank in the wind, turning into a palm-sized cauldron. It spun and landed on Yiguchen's palm. Even with Yiguchen's tenacious nature, he was still dazed for a moment when he saw the cauldron fall into his hands. This was the ancient cauldron of the Void Sword sect, and the elixirs in it were priceless. Boom! The people of the 7 great forces present, except for those who had a close relationship with Yiguchen, couldn't help but erupt with their cultivation. Their eyes were scarlet and blazing. If a saint elixir could make them go crazy, then this bronze cauldron full of elixirs was enough to make them risk everything to snatch it. This was a great opportunity that belonged to Yiguchen, but it also brought great killing intent to Yiguchen. Chapter 303. One should know that Xianhao had previously obtained a quasi-divine elixir, which had caused many people to drool over it. Xianhao's identity and strength had suppressed the others, so they didn't dare to do anything. But now, what Yiguchen had obtained was not only a quasi-divine elixir, but also not a divine elixir. It was an entire bronze cauldron. And everyone knew that there couldn't be only heavenly soul infant soul elixir in the bronze cauldron. Even if there was only one divine elixir in the cauldron, there must be more than one quasi-divine elixir. Not to mention everyone present, even the divine dwelling experts would be envious of the bronze cauldron. They couldn't resist such a great opportunity. Even Xianhao, who had always been aloof and arrogant, couldn't shift his gaze away from the cauldron in Yiguchen's hands. Seeing such a situation, Mu Xingzu, Chu Qingqi, Ji Ling, Yiguchen, Chen Yi, Bai Yanji, Zither Fairy and the others all landed around Yiguchen. Some of the inner yard disciples who had received favors from Yiguchen before also stood around Yiguchen to protect him. Other people, including Bai Zichen, Wang Xiaotian and the other disciples of the same sect couldn't hide their blazing eyes as they stared at the cauldron in Yi Guqin's hands. It should be said that one of the three great opportunities in the Void Sword realm, and all the opportunities in the Pill Hall, had fallen into the hands of Yi Guqin. Who would miss such an opportunity? Yi Guqin, you can't be thinking of taking all the elixirs in this cauldron for yourself, right? Pan Shuelian walked out from the crowd, swaying her waist. Her face was also filled with unbearable desire as she stared at the cauldron in Yi Guqin's hands. Pan Shuelian. Yi Guqin's eyes suddenly emitted a cold light, stabbing towards Pan Shuelian like a sharp sword. Yi Guqin was already extremely impatient with such a sharp and mean woman. Being stared at by Yi Guqin's awe-inspiring gaze, even though Pan Shuelian's cultivation was higher than his, she still retreated repeatedly at this moment, her jade-like face pale. However, her goal was the same as the disciples of the other factions. They were all targeting Yi Guqin. This made Pan Shuelian calm down a lot. She gritted her teeth and said, Yi Guqin, you should know that all the opportunities in the Pill Hall are in this bronze furnace. If you monopolize them, what will happen to us? As Pan Shuelian spoke, many of the surrounding martial artists nodded. The fervor in their eyes turned into a faint threat. Pan Shuelian, you are truly shameless. Opportunities are obtained by those who are fated. This bronze cauldron originally belonged to young Master Yi himself. Why should he care about you? Zither Fairy's jade lips parted slightly. There was a trace of disgust in her beautiful eyes. You bitch. You have a good relationship with Yi Guqin. Naturally, you will speak up for him. However, we are different. Yi Guqin, don't even think about taking the cauldron for yourself today. Pan Shuelian gritted her teeth, placed her hands on her waist, and scolded like a shrew. You. Zither Fairy didn't know how to scold people. At this moment, she was so angry that her face was flushed red. Yi Guqin, hand over the cauldron obediently. Bewitching Blade Nieling of the Sealed Blade King Palace walked out. His pair of bewitching eyes stared at Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin, hand over the cauldron. Just as Pan Shuelian said, this cauldron isn't something that a cripple like you can monopolize. Young Marquis Fong Chen walked out. He was wearing a black golden battle armor and holding a black golden spear. Yi Guqin, although your talent is beyond our expectations, what's the use of it if you lose your life? Prince Yuani held the heavenly sacred 5-elemental wheel in his hand and said in a playful tone, Yi Guqin, I've said that after the Pill Hall's fortuitous encounter, you will die. Mo Juechen dragged the sword burial blade with his single arm. At this moment, all of Yi Guqin's enemies stepped out. A strong murderous aura spread out like a blood cloud in the sky. Whether it was Yi Guqin's shocking talent or the bronze cauldron that he obtained, these geniuses already felt a strong sense of danger. They even had the thought of nipping this genius in the bud. They wanted to kill Yi Guqin here and now. Bai Zichen Wangshan, why are you still standing there? Come and help. On the other side, Ji Ling shouted at Bai Zichen and the others. Since the situation was critical, everyone in the inner courtyard naturally had to stick together. However, Bai Zichen's eyes were filled with jealousy. He tried his best to speak in a calm tone. Actually, I also think that Yi Guqin should hand over the bronze cauldron. What? Ji Ling's mind buzzed. She couldn't believe that those words came out of Bai Zichen's mouth. A man's wealth is his own ruin. Yi Guqin can't hold the bronze cauldron alone. Wang Xiaoyan's tone wasn't as calm as Bai Zichen's. It was very cold. Mu Xingzu, Chu Qingqi, and the others felt a chill in their hearts when they saw this. On the other hand, Yi Guqin's eyes flashed with a cold light, but he wasn't surprised. Sometimes, human nature was like this. Ji Ling's beautiful eyes dimmed, and a trace of exhaustion appeared between her brows. Just as the atmosphere was about to explode, Xian Hao, who hadn't said anything until now, finally spoke. Yi Guqin, I'll give you two choices. First, hand over the ball of light and the bronze cauldron. I guarantee that you can leave safely, and no one will dare to attack you. Xian Hao's words caused an uproar, and Mo Juechen frowned. He wanted to kill Yi Guqin with his own hands. What's the second choice? Yi Guqin's gaze was indifferent as he asked. Kill you, and I'll personally take the ball of light and the bronze cauldron. Although it's a little troublesome, I don't care. Xian Hao's expression was calm. He was confident and qualified to say such words. Peh. Yiguchen shook his head and laughed. You can still laugh? Xian Hao's eyes narrowed. The current Yiguchen was in a desperate situation. Xian Hao alone was enough to bring fatal danger to Yiguchen. Not to mention, Mo Juechen, Nye Ling, Fang Chen, Prince Yuanyi, and the others were watching covetously from the side. I'm laughing at you guys. You're so confident that you'll be able to defeat me? Yiguchen's lips still carried a faint smile. Oh, you think you can overturn the heavens in my hands today? As Xian Hao's words fell, a powerful sword qi spread out. Even geniuses like Zither Fairy, Bai Yanji, and Chen Yi were forced to take a few steps back. I can't overturn the heavens right now, but I can fly. As Yi Guchen's words fell, he directly activated the power of the vermilion bird totem on his chest. An extremely hot and vigorous totem power surged out from the vermilion bird totem, forming a pair of gorgeous flaming wings on Yi Guchen's back. The flaming wings expanded like a vermilion bird spreading its wings. Yi Guchen's figure rose into the sky like a flame, turning into a blazing meteor and shooting into the distance. How is this possible? Wings of true qi. This Yi Guchen is a life and death chamber expert. Everyone was incomparably shocked as they involuntarily cried out. Chapter 304. Yi Guchen's move simply shocked everyone's eyes. That pair of gorgeous fire wings were burning with raging flames. As the wings flapped, it brought along a blazing gale. Just like that, Yi Guchen turned into a flaming meteor and shot into the distance. How is this possible? Hidden gate of life and death. Pan Shuelian covered her mouth and let out an ear-piercing scream. This made her brain go blank and she couldn't react. It can't be the hidden gate of life and death. If Yi Guchen really has such a cultivation, would he still care about us? Even Xian Hao, he can ignore him. Prince Yuanyi gritted his teeth and said. On the other side, Mu Xingzu, Ji Ling and the others were also stunned by Yi Guchen's sudden move. Bai Zichen and the others' hearts skipped a beat. They couldn't believe it. That might be some kind of secret technique. I don't believe that he has the cultivation of the hidden gate of life and death. Bloodblade Mo Juechen's tone was cold. His figure flickered and he actually chased after Yi Guchen. Yes, it must be some kind of secret technique. Although a secret technique that allows one to fly is very rare, this is the only possibility. The people present weren't fools. They immediately reacted. Yi Guchen couldn't possibly have the hidden gate of life and death. Even so, Yi Guchen's hidden move still made the group gnash their teeth in anger. Damn it, how can we catch up? Everyone outside the pill hall flew towards the direction where Yi Guchen was flying towards. After all, that cauldron of elixirs was too tempting. No one was willing to give it up. Zither Fairy, Chu Qingqi and the others also followed closely behind. They were afraid that Yi Guchen would meet with an accident. Xian Hao's figure flickered in the void like a ghost among the group of people chasing after him. With every passing second, Xian Hao's figure would move 100 feet forward. This was the extreme speed that the peerless void sword intent gave him. That should be the power of the totem. I didn't expect you to have such a trump card. But do you think you can escape from my grasp? That ball of light and the bronze furnace can only belong to me, Xian Hao. A cold light flashed in Xian Hao's eyes. His gaze was extremely sharp. He had fought with some of the holy sons and holy daughters of the barbarian race, and even the more powerful Double Crown King. Naturally, he was no stranger to totem power. Although Xian Hao was a little surprised that Yi Guchen could utilize the power of totems, he was not too surprised. This was because many cultivators in the Great Desolate Mansion, which was close to the Five Elements land, had also come into contact with totem power. However, they were unable to display the full power of their totem like the real barbarians. You want to find another way to cultivate the power of the totem because your real qi has been destroyed? How foolish. If you don't have the supreme totem of the barbarian race, your cultivation will stop forever. Xian Hao thought coldly in his heart. Obviously, he thought that Yi Guchen was desperate. But how could he know what level Yi Guchen's totem was? The Void Sword realm had a wide range. The mountain range rose and fell, and many boundaries intersected with each other. In the distant sky, a flowing flame broke through the air, and the gorgeous fire wings left a red tail. It was Yiguchen. Fortunately, I have the wings of vermilion bird. Otherwise, it would be really difficult to get out of that situation. Yiguchen sighed softly. Although he was not afraid of danger, his strength had not recovered, and it was still not suitable for a head-on confrontation with others. After getting rid of these troubles, I will contact Yi Xie and go to the Thunder Tide Land. Yiguchen did not forget his main purpose of entering the Void Sword realm, which was to find the heavenly thunder to tear the seal of the Sea of Qi and break through the realm. It should be about time to get rid of them. Yiguchen looked back, but there was no one behind him. Although his wings of vermilion bird were not wings of real Qi, they also had extreme speed. Other cultivators could not catch up with him just by relying on their body movement. But at this moment, Yiguchen suddenly felt a fluctuation of soul power in his mind. Could it be? Yiguchen frowned. Behind him, a figure flashed continuously in the void. It was Xianhao. Yiguchen's eyes suddenly darkened. Xianhao's speed was amazing. Although it was not true that he could travel through the void, it was not far off. With the help of the peerless Void Sword essence, Xianhao could flash at an extremely fast speed. Of course, this kind of continuous flash also consumed a lot of energy. Even Xianhao felt that his Sea of Qi was a little empty at this moment. But Yiguchen's situation was not optimistic either. His vermilion bird totem power had not fully awakened, and the wings of vermilion bird consumed a lot of totem power. It could not support Yiguchen to fly for a long time, and he needed to rest regularly to recover his strength. Yiguchen, do you think you can escape? Xianhao said. Then let's see who has the last laugh. Yiguchen's eyes flashed continuously, and he made up his mind. His figure abruptly turned and rushed in another direction. Xianhao frowned, but he followed closely. Swoosh! Just like that, Yiguchen and Xianhao chased after each other. As time passed, the wings of vermilion bird on Yiguchen's back started to become illusory, as if they could not continue. Yiguchen, it seems that the farce is about to end. Seeing this, Xianhao's lips curled into a faint smile of victory. Is that so? Yiguchen also smiled. He looked at the mountainous area in front of him. Rays of light from spirit formations rose into the air and flickered. That is. Xianhao also noticed that there was a continuous stretch of spirit formations in front of him. In the Void Sword realm, there were many spirit formations gathered together like this. No one knew what kind of spirit formations there were. Killing formations, maze formations, spirit gathering formations, and teleportation formations. Yiguchen, do you want to die? If you step into the killing formation, your life will be taken in an instant. Xianhao's heart sank slightly. He guessed what Yiguchen was going to do. Heh! Xianhao, why don't you take a gamble? Yiguchen laughed loudly. At this moment, the wings of vermilion bird on his back completely faded and scattered into crimson light spots. Yiguchen's figure also fell rapidly from the sky towards the center of the spirit formation area. Boom, boom, boom. In an instant, many spirit formations were activated and rays of light of various colors rose into the air. There were unparalleled sword formations, defensive formations, and countless spirit formations flashed and intertwined. Yiguchen's figure was directly submerged in the sea of light. Damn it! Even with Xianhao's state of mind, his face was filled with gloom. Whether it was the dark golden light ball or the bronze elixir furnace, their value was immeasurable. However, Xianhao was also extremely wary of the spirit formations. If he accidentally stepped on the wrong one, even with his cultivation of 9 transformations of the godly soul and many life-saving techniques, he would not be able to last a few breaths. Damn it, let's guard this place for a few days first. Xianhao had no other choice but to stay here temporarily and wait for the spirit formation to fall silent before he investigated the situation. However, at this moment, in another mountainous area at the edge of the Void Sword realm, A teleportation formation that was covered with dust and had been silent for a long time suddenly began to turn and emit rays of light. Immediately after the light flashed, Yi Guchen's figure flashed out. Cough! He directly coughed out a large mouthful of blood. There were many wounds on his body that were dripping with blood. Obviously, Yi Guchen also took a great risk and paid a great price. That spirit formation is indeed powerful. If I did not accidentally enter the teleportation formation, I might have really died. Yi Guchen sat weakly on the ground and blood flowed from his body. However, it was worth it to pay such a price. Although Yi Guchen was severely injured, his eyes were surging with joy. This time, Yi Guchen made a big profit. Chapter 305. Before coming to the Void Sword realm, Yi Guchen's original goal was to find the heavenly thunder in the Thunder Tide. However, he didn't expect that the Sword Pavilion and Pill Hall would bring Yi Guchen such a great opportunity. This was something that Yi Guchen didn't expect. Let's find a place to recover first, Yi Guchen muttered to himself. He found a remote mountain cave and hid within it. Although Yi Guchen's injuries were severe, he didn't need to worry about healing elixirs with the Pill Hall's bronze cauldron in his hand. This bronze cauldron is also extraordinary. Yi Guchen's origin ring flashed and a palm-sized cauldron appeared in his hand. Although the surface was mottled and simple, countless fine spiritual inscriptions could be vaguely seen flowing on it. Although Yi Guchen couldn't determine the grade of the cauldron, it should be at least at the level of a mystical inscription divine weapon. This cauldron could expand or shrink, so it definitely wasn't an ordinary item. However, Yi Guchen didn't have the intention to study the cauldron. He opened the cauldron's lid. Countless rays of light shone inside, as if it contained a small world filled with treasures. Although the cauldron could expand or shrink, the internal area was constant. It was very spacious. Those elixirs were gathered together and placed in a corner of the cauldron according to their grade. Even with Yi Guchen's indifferent temperament, there was a hint of joy in his eyes at this moment. The nascent soul elixir was in the center of the cauldron like the sun. There were 12 quasi-sage elixirs around it. They were like stars, revolving around the nascent soul elixir. Only one sage elixir? Yi Guchen was slightly disappointed. He wasn't greedy, but Yi Guchen still had a glimmer of hope. If there was a healing sage elixir in the cauldron, it might be helpful for Su Jianshi. After all, a sacred pill was refined from a sacred herb. If it was a healing pill, it should be effective in waking her up. However, the nascent soul elixir was the only saint elixir he had. It was a saint elixir that could assist in the cultivation of soul power. It had no effect on healing injuries. However, even if it was the ancient Void Sword sect, it was already an unexpected surprise to have a holy pill. It seems that the only way to awaken Su Jianshi is in the barbarian 5-element temple. Yi Guchen sighed, but he quickly pulled himself together and looked at the remaining 12 quasi-holy pills. Although the quasi-holy elixir's effect was far inferior to the holy elixir, it was still much better than supreme-grade treasure elixir. When Yi Guchen had nothing to do in the inner courtyard, he had also flipped through some ancient books on medicinal pills to increase his knowledge. Therefore, Yi Guchen was actually able to recognize the names and effects of these quasi-holy pills. He took out one of the dark green pills. This pill glowed with green light and emitted a fragrant aroma. It was as if it was formed from the condensation of nectar. This quasi-holy elixir was called the Jade Healing Elixir. It was a pill that was extremely helpful for healing injuries. Yi Guchen directly opened his mouth and swallowed the Jade Healing Elixir. He began to heal his heavy injuries. The elixir cut open Yi Guchen's body. An extremely pure medicinal effect spread like a warm current to Yi Guchen's limbs and bones. In an instant, all the pores on his body relaxed and an extremely comfortable feeling spread throughout his body. As expected of a quasi-holy elixir, Yi Guchen secretly praised. This Jade Healing Elixir's effect was similar to the Great Jade Spiritual Recovery Elixir that Jun Xiaoyao gave him before. It was only now that Yi Guchen knew that the Great Jade Spiritual Recovery Elixir that Jun Xiaoyao gave him was also a quasi-holy elixir. Thinking of this, Yi Guchen couldn't help but be speechless. Jun Xiaoyao was indeed a genius of a major force in the Nantian region. He could casually take out a quasi-holy elixir. With the jade healing elixir, Yi Guchen's injuries also recovered very quickly. After about 2 days, all the wounds on his body were healed. The state of his body was also almost recovered. With this bronze alchemy furnace, I don't have to worry about most of the elixir resources in the future. Yi Guchen's eyes flashed. He was going to take the nascent soul elixir when he broke through. As for the other 11 quasi-holy elixirs, each had their own uses. Yi Guchen would use them sparingly. As for the many remaining elixirs and spiritual elixirs, Yi Guchen would use them wisely. Right now, the entire Void Sword realm should be crazily spreading the news that I have obtained an opportunity. I'd better wait a few days before going out. Yi Guchen calculated in his heart. He didn't plan to go out to look for an opportunity immediately. This was because he still had the opportunity in the sword pavilion to digest. Yi Guchen scanned the vital ring. Most of the spiritual level swordsmanship on the second level of the sword pavilion had been absorbed by him. These swordsmanship could be used as a reference, but now Yi Guchen didn't plan to choose any of the swordsmanship to cultivate. He didn't want to bite off more than he could chew. What Yi Guchen cared most about was the dark golden light cluster on the third level of the sword pavilion. It should be known that this light cluster was something that even Xian Hao coveted and swore to get. Moreover, Yi Guchen could also sense that the swordsmanship in this dark golden light cluster should have a great relationship with the void sword skill. Without any hesitation, Yi Guchen took out a dark golden jade slip from the dark golden light cluster. After some investigation, Yi Guchen's eyes also surged with a trace of excitement. In the dark golden jade slip, a core swordsmanship of the ancient Void Sword sect was recorded. The Superior King's level swordsmanship, Great Void Sword Wave. It turned out to be the Superior King's level swordsmanship. As a sword fanatic, Yi Guchen was naturally interested in this swordsmanship. Apart from the Thousand Deities Tribulation, Merciless Heaven, and other swordsmanship that were difficult to classify. Now, among the swordsmanship that Yi Guchen cultivated, only the god-slaying swordsmanship could be compared with the Great Void Sword Wave. And only the 5th and 6th moves of the god-slaying swordsmanship could reach the power of the Superior King's level swordsmanship. However, if you want to cultivate this Great Void Sword Wave, there is a threshold. The minimum requirement is to cultivate the Void Sword skill to the perfection of martial arts. This condition caused Yi Guchen to be extremely surprised. The Void Sword skill was an upper spiritual level swordsmanship, and it was very difficult to cultivate it to the perfection of martial arts. Even if one was a heavenly talent in swordsmanship, it would be difficult to reach the requirement without 4 or 5 years of practice. But unfortunately, Yi Guchen's understanding of swordsmanship could not be inferred by common sense. He had already cultivated the Void Sword skill to perfection, and was only one step away from the perfection of martial arts. However, Yi Guchen also knew that although it was only one step away, this step was even more difficult to break through than all the previous realms combined. Because when a swordsmanship was cultivated to the perfection of martial arts, one could comprehend the ultimate move. That kind of power was not comparable to a small unique skill or a big killing move. And the ultimate move of the Void Sword skill was the key to the cultivation of the Great Void Sword Wave. It seems that this Great Void Sword Wave can't be cultivated at the moment, but with my understanding it won't take long. Yi Guchen had his own confidence in swordsmanship. At the same time, Yi Guchen also understood why Xian Hao was so eager to get this swordsmanship. The Great Void Sword Wave was very compatible with the Void Sword essence. Just like Yi Guchen's God-slaying sword technique combined with the Azura sword essence, it could double the power. If Xian Hao really got the Great Void Sword Wave, as long as he cultivated it successfully, with this swordsmanship, even if he could not defeat all the geniuses, he would not be far from it. But unfortunately, Xian Hao's opportunity was taken away by Yi Guchen. I'll stay here to cultivate the Void Sword skill first, and check out the situation in a few days. Yi Guchen made up his mind and began to cultivate the Void Sword skill here. A few days passed in a row, and Yi Guchen's understanding of the Void Sword skill was also on the basis of perfection, slowly transforming towards the perfection of martial arts. At this moment, the communication jade slip in Yi Guchen's origin ring reacted. Well, is it from Zither Fairy? Yi Guchen raised his eyebrows. Chapter 306. Young Master Yi, you should be fine, right? Zither Fairy knows that you will definitely turn the misfortune into a blessing. I think that Pan Shuelyan should have made a move in the past few days. If young Master Yi has nothing to do, you can come here and join me. After checking the jade slip, Yi Guchen's eyes flashed. Before entering the Void Sword realm, he had promised Zither Fairy that he would help her deal with Pan Shuelyan. As for Pan Shuelyan, Yi Guchen only felt coldness in his heart. Back in the pill hall, it was Pan Shuelyan who had stirred up the conflict between everyone and Yi Guchen. Yi Guchen didn't mind getting rid of such people. Moreover, the Void Sword realm was a battlefield where the elites of the seven forces fought. If she died, Rhino Divine Palace couldn't make Yi Guchen pay the price. After some preparations, Yi Guchen also rushed towards the location in Zither Fairy's message. About a day later, Yi Guchen's figure appeared at the edge of the Void Sword realm. Because the entire Void Sword realm was located in a space, generally speaking, the edge of the realm was the most dangerous. Because you didn't know where it came from, there would be a void turbulence. In that kind of void turbulence, not to mention spirit experts, even divine dwelling experts would die without a doubt if they were caught in it without special means. Yi Guchen raised his eyes and looked at the distant sky. There were many gray void turbulences, rolling endlessly like gray dragons. This place is located at the edge of the Void Sword realm. There are many void turbulences, plus many strange and dangerous places. There aren't any famous treasures, so there are no traces of people. This made Yi Guchen breathe a sigh of relief. In his current situation, it was really not suitable for him to appear in a place with many people. After all, the opportunities he had obtained were too coveted. At this moment, a figure in pink drifted over from a hidden place in the distance. Her figure was slender and her face was beautiful. It was Zither Fairy. Young Master Yi. Seeing Yi Guchen's arrival, Zither Fairy's beautiful eyes shone brightly. She landed in front of Yi Guchen, bringing with her a fragrant wind. Yi Guchen nodded slightly and looked at Zither Fairy. Suddenly, he felt that her aura was a bit weak, as if she had been injured. Zither Fairy, are you injured? Yi Guchen frowned. Zither Fairy pursed her lips and said with a smile, it's nothing serious. It's just that when you left the pill hall, Pan Shuelyan, Jiyan, Fangchen, Xian Ying and the others wanted to capture us and use that as a threat to force you out. They deserve to die. Yi Guchen involuntarily released his aura, and a cold aura gathered in his eyes. Then, with a wave of his hand, a peak-grade healing pill fell towards Zither Fairy. Even Zither Fairy was a little stunned. She was amazed by Yi Guchen's style. However, when she remembered that Yi Guchen had obtained the bronze alchemy furnace, she no longer hesitated and accepted the pill. Are you all okay? What about Xingzhu and the others? Yi Guchen asked. We're fine. Although they were aggressive, we had Ji Ling, Qin Yi and the other prodigies on our side. We managed to escape in the end, Zither Fairy said. That's good. Yi Guchen's anxious heart calmed down a little. Young Master Yi, Pan Shuelyan and the others should have already reached this boundary. It's better for us to be careful. Zither Fairy's eyes flickered. Yi Guchen nodded slightly. He followed Zither Fairy and flew towards the edge of the Void Sword realm. Not long after Yi Guchen and the others left, a delicate and beautiful figure flew towards them. Her face was like jade, and her eyebrows were black and her eyes were bright. Her pair of clear and misty eyes contained a trace of helplessness, a trace of panic and a trace of fear. This woman was Mu Xingzhu. Naturally, she was not invited by Zither Fairy. Instead, she was forced to come. I beg you, don't continue to follow Xingzhu. Sob. Mu Xingzhu's pretty face was crying as she kept flying. In the dense forest behind her, a blue figure flashed past like a ghost. If a man saw it, he would feel guilty and afraid, let alone a young girl like Mu Xingzhu. What ghost? Mu Xingzhu was so scared that she screamed. Coincidentally, She flew in the direction that Yiguchen, Zither Fairy, and the others had left. In the dense forest, the ghostly figure continued to drift, as if it was still singing faintly. 1,000 years on the broken blue bridge, Junwen's return is uncertain. After about 4 hours, Yiguchen and Zither Fairy almost reached the edge of the Void Sword realm. There was only a dried-up riverbed here, running from the north to the south. On the riverbed, there was a dark blue stone bridge that had long been mottled and decayed. On the opposite side of the bridge, there was a barren mountain. Under the barren mountain, there was a pavilion. That should be the place of opportunity for the cave abode, Zither Fairy said from the side. Yiguchen frowned slightly and suddenly looked behind him. Young Master Yi, what's wrong? Zither Fairy asked in confusion. No, nothing, Yiguchen said, but his eyebrows were still tightly knitted. Just now, he seemed to vaguely feel a gaze on his back. That gaze made his body tremble slightly, and he felt a cold current surge from the bottom of his heart. This immediately reminded him of the ghostly figure that Mu Xingzu had mentioned outside the sword pavilion. What exactly is it? Yiguchen thought to himself. Young Master Yi, the cave abode should be at the pavilion on the barren mountain. You just need to cross this bridge to reach it, Zither Fairy said. Yiguchen nodded slightly. At this moment, a voice that made Yiguchen's eyes reveal a hint of annoyance came from another direction. As expected, Zither Fairy, you still brought Yiguchen here. A voluptuous figure walked over with a proud smile. It was Pan Shuelian. Pan Shuelian, I knew you would be here. Where is your ally? Show yourself together. Zither Fairy's eyes were filled with disgust. Heh, you really know me well. Pan Shuelian giggled, and even her huge breasts were shaking. Yiguchen, since you are here today, don't even think about leaving. A figure that was surging with a blazing aura appeared. He had a head of fiery red short hair and a pair of red crystal eyes. It was the little flame emperor that Yiguchen had fought before, Jiyen. You managed to rope in the little flame emperor? Zither Fairy's eyes flashed. This was not beyond her expectations. However, Yiguchen, today, this Crown Prince wants you to spit out all the opportunities you have. Crown Prince Yuani appeared with the heavenly sacred 5-element wheel in his hand. Zither Fairy's expression changed slightly. She did not expect Pan Shuelian to be so magnanimous as to find someone else. One had to know that for every person Pan Shuelian found, she would have to give out an additional opportunity. Yiguchen, today, not only the opportunities of this cave abode, but also your opportunities will all belong to us. Young Marquis Fengshen appeared, wearing black and gold battle armor and holding a black and gold spear. His aura was domineering. Zither Fairy's expression completely changed. Chapter 307. She didn't expect Pan Shuelian to be so generous. Not only did she rope in Little Flame Emperor, but she also joined forces with Prince Yuani and young Marquis Fengshen. In this way, even if Pan Shuelian obtained the cave dwelling, she would have to share it with the other three. Pan Shuelian, when did you become so generous? Zither Fairy's face was solemn. If it's just the cave dwelling, I wouldn't be willing to part with it. Perhaps I would only rope in one ally, but I expected you to call Yiguchen, and Yiguchen has obtained enough for us to share, Pan Shuelian said with a smile. One had to admit that she was indeed scheming. Alright, let's not talk too much. Things might change if we delay. Let's capture Yiguchen first and seize his opportunity. Then we can explore the cave residence. Young Marquis Fengshen's tone was cold. The black gold spear in his hand trembled, and the air exploded. Fengshen was a genius that wasn't weaker than Ji Yen and Chen Yi. Even if he wasn't as strong as Xian Hao, he was still very important. Kill! Without saying anything else, Pan Shuelian, Ji Yen, Prince Yuani, and Fengshen attacked Yiguchen and Zither Fairy. Zither Fairy, hold Pan Shuelian back. Yiguchen shouted. The origin ring on his finger flashed, and the blood cloud centipede rushed out, smashing a fist toward Fengshen and Ji Yen. This time, Yiguchen directly activated the blood cloud centipede's power to the 9 transformations level. Be careful of this puppet. Ji Yan exclaimed when he felt the terrifying fluctuations from the blood cloud centipede's fist. He had suffered from the blood cloud centipede before. Your Highness, Ji Yan and I will hold off the blood cloud centipede. You should have no problem dealing with Yi Guchen, who has lost all his true qi, right? Fang Chen turned to Prince Yuani and said, No problem, I will kill him. Prince Yuani's eyes were cold. Boom, boom. Fang Chen held the black gold spear in his hand, while Ji Yan also took out his mysterious fire fan. The two of them directly clashed with the blood cloud centipede of the 9 transformations of the divine soul. Ripples of energy shook the surroundings like waves. On the other side, Pan Shuelian was also fighting with Zither Fairy. Although Pan Shuelian's cultivation was 2 levels higher than Zither Fairy's, Zither Fairy had her own means and would not be defeated in a short time. Yi Guchen, you were indeed invincible in the infinite wilderness plain. Even I had to use all kinds of tricks to kill you, but you still managed to escape in the end. But now, you will definitely die. Prince Yuani's heavenly sacred 5 elemental will spun and a surge of 5 elemental mystic power flowed out of it, strengthening Prince Yuani. This. Yi Guchen's eyes suddenly flashed. When Prince Yuani activated the heavenly sacred 5 element wheel, the 5-colored golden elixir in his body seemed to tremble slightly. That feeling was as if he had found food. Could it be? Yi Guchen's lips curled into a faint smile. You are about to die, but you can still smile. Prince Yuani's face was cold as he punched out. 5 elements King Fist. He punched out, and the combination of his powerful genuine qi and 5 elements power seemed to transform into a 5-colored mountain, suppressing Yi Guchen. Prince Yuani was the prince of the Saint Origin dynasty. After joining the Saint Origin Academy, all kinds of resources piled up on him, allowing his cultivation to reach the 3rd transformation of the divine soul. If it were an ordinary warrior in the qi refining realm, he would definitely be killed by Prince Yuani's punch. But Yi Guchen was different. Boom. Yi Guchen activated the indestructible body of Vajra. The surface of his body glowed with golden light, and Sanskrit flowed. He held the meteorite's soft sword in his hand, and at the same time he strengthened it with totem power. The sword momentum surged and spread like a raging fire. Boom! The two of them clashed. Yi Guchen's fists split the sky, and his sword was like fire. The golden fist radiance intertwined with the blazing sword radiance. Even without the support of genuine qi, there was a terrifying fluctuation. Damn it, Yi Guchen is really difficult to deal with. Prince Yuani's eyes twitched as he thought coldly. At the same time, his killing intent towards Yi Guchen became even stronger. Yi Guchen already had such strength without genuine qi. If he really recovered, Prince Yuani could not imagine how strong Yi Guchen would be. Boom, boom, boom. Prince Yuani punched out, and the 5 elements mountains appeared from the void, suppressing Yi Guchen. Yi Guchen activated the vermilion bird totem on his chest again, and at the same time, flames surged all over his body. The heavenly sun Xianming fire and vermilion bird divine fire surged out at the same time. Boom! A flaming sword radiance swept out in all directions, and the surrounding ground was scorched. Yi Guchen had already comprehended the embryonic form of the fire sword essence. With the support of 2 kinds of flames and the power of the vermilion bird totem, the power of this sword was not weaker than the sword with the support of genuine qi. Bang! The 5 elements mystic force and the flaming sword radiance collided and wore each other down. Divine radiance burst out, and the surrounding ground rumbled. Don't. Yi Guchen suddenly retreated, his body trembling as if he was unable to withstand the impact. Yi Guchen, you're dead meat. Prince Yuani saw this and hurriedly took the opportunity to pour his vigorous genuine qi into the heavenly sacred 5-element wheel, and at the same time, control it with his soul power. With a whoosh, the heavenly sacred 5-element will seem to tear the void, and with an extremely sharp fluctuation, it slashed towards Yi Guchen's head. This move was extremely fast and powerful. Even an expert in the 5th transformation of the divine soul realm would be seriously injured or even killed if careless. However, the cold light flashed in Yi Guchen's eyes, and the corner of his mouth curled into a smile. This. Prince Yuani saw this and faintly felt that something was wrong, but he could not think of any other moves Yiguchen had. I've been waiting for this moment. Yiguchen directly drew on the power of the 5-colored golden elixir in his body, and then stretched out his hand. Golden light flowed in his palm, and he grabbed the heavenly sacred 5-element wheel that was tearing the void. You're courting death. Prince Yuani snorted. Yiguchen grabbed the heavenly sacred 5-element wheel with one hand, and his body suddenly retreated. His arm also made a cracking sound, and at the same time, blood spurted out from his palm. Although Yiguchen's physical body could withstand a spiritual inscription divine weapon, the heavenly sacred 5-element wheel had the 5 elements mystic force, and it was far from ordinary divine weapons. However, just as Prince Yuani's lips curled into a cold smile, the next moment his smile froze. Buzz. Buzz. The 5-colored golden elixir in Yiguchen's body trembled violently, and a strange force flowed out, landing directly on the heavenly sacred 5-element wheel. Then, the 5 elements mystic force within was quickly absorbed by the 5-colored golden elixir. How is this possible? Prince Yuani shouted in disbelief as he felt the 5 elements mystic force being rapidly drained from the heavenly sacred 5-element wheel. However, it was already too late. In just a few breaths' time, the 5 elements mystic force within the heavenly sacred 5-element wheel had been completely absorbed by the 5-colored golden elixir. The entire wheel dimmed and turned into scrap metal. Yiguchen squeezed slightly, and the wheel shattered, turning into iron dust. The 5-colored golden elixir in his dantian was shining. Other than the vermilion bird and green dragon totem regions, the other 3 regions also lit up slightly. Although the other 3 totems were not as powerful as the vermilion bird and green dragon totems, they could also release their own powers. Prince Yuani, you're the one who will die today. Yiguchen's fist radiance split the sky, and a 5 elements totem force burst out. Chapter 308. It was Yiguchen's first time controlling the power of the 5 elements totem, so he was a little shaky. However, this did not hinder the power of this punch. Rumble. Yiguchen's invincible Vajra body, coupled with his physical strength and the power of the 5 elements totem, caused this punch to surge with golden light and fill the sky with 5 elements divine brilliance. The air screamed and vibrated, and Prince Yuani's face turned pale. Once again, he took out a talisman and activated it with his true energy. Immediately, it formed a light screen that shielded his body behind him. Boom! Yiguchen's punch landed on the light screen, and the light screen shook violently with cracking sounds. Break! Yiguchen released the power of the dragon elephant from his perfect physical body. His blood chi was shocking, and with the power of the totem, he tore the protective light screen apart with a boom. Feng Qin, save me! Prince Yuani shouted as he retreated. He was traumatized by Yiguchen. Trash! On the other side, Feng Qin's face darkened as he cursed in his heart. If Prince Yuani was not the crown prince of the Saint Origin dynasty, Feng Qin would not have protected him. Swoosh! Feng Qin threw the black gold long spear, which was filled with violent true qi. It was like a black dragon, piercing towards Yiguchen. Yiguchen frowned slightly. He was confident that he could deal with Prince Yuani, but Feng Qin was obviously more difficult to deal with than Prince Yuani. He retreated abruptly. At the same time, Yiguchen controlled the blood cloud puppet to attack Ji Yen and Feng Qin with even more ferocious power. Boom! Bang! Bang! Ji Yen and Feng Qin were both forced to retreat. Without the protection of the black gold long spear, Feng Qin was obviously in a worse state, coughing up blood from the corner of his mouth. Prince Yuani's figure flickered, and he joined them. On the other side, Yiguchen controlled the blood cloud puppet to retreat with Zither Fairy. The two sides were once again in a standoff. While they were wary of each other, the atmosphere was tense. Yiguchen? The resentment in Prince Yuani's eyes could not be erased. On the other side, Yiguchen's expression remained calm, but he was thinking of a way to break out of this situation. This was because the demonic cloud blood crystal behind the blood cloud serpent's head was running out of energy. Can they unleash the power of the hidden latch of life and death for a short period of time? But if they have life-saving methods, Yiguchen pondered. Just as both sides were trying to figure out what was going on, a figure suddenly appeared in the dense forest not far away. Who is it? Both Pan Shuelyan and Yi Guchen looked over. The person who came was dressed in a light green dress. She had snow-white skin, starry eyes, and a fine nose. It was Mu Xingzu. Mu Xingzu, why are you here? Yi Guchen was slightly surprised to see her. Senior brother Yi, sister Zither, you're here. Mu Xingzu saw Yi Guchen and Zither Fairy and immediately rushed over. Senior brother Yi, ghost, there's a ghost. Mu Xingzu grabbed Yi Guchen's sleeve and panicked. Ghost. Yi Guchen's gaze froze, and he was even more puzzled. On the other side, when Pan Shuelyan and the others saw that it was Mu Xingzu, they were slightly relieved. In their eyes, a Qi refinement realm martial artist was as insignificant as an ant. Humph, you came at the right time. Yi Guchen, I'll personally torture that little girl to death in front of you later. Prince Yuanyi's hatred for Yi Guchen was unquenchable. Shameless boasting. Yi Guchen's eyes flashed with cold lightning as they pierced through the void. Just as both sides were about to draw their swords and the flames of war were about to ignite. A faint voice could be heard coming from somewhere. 1,000 years on the broken blue bridge, June Wen's return is uncertain. Who is it now? Pan Shuelyan, Prince Yuanyi, and the others were puzzled as they scanned their surroundings. When Mu Xingzu heard this, her face revealed even more fear. Her voice trembled as she said, Senior brother Yi, the ghost is here. What exactly is it? In the face of such an unknown existence, even Yi Guchen was extremely vigilant. Unknowingly, the surroundings were covered in fog. A vast expanse of white mist shrouded the dried riverbed and the dark blue ancient bridge in a hazy mist. Senior brother Yi, look over there. Mu Xingzu's eyes suddenly widened as if she had seen something unbelievable. She pointed at the dark blue stone bridge. Everyone here, including Yi Guchen, turned their gaze to the stone bridge. On the stone bridge, a graceful blue figure stood there calmly. Is that the ghost? Yi Guchen focused his gaze. The fear in Mu Xingzu's eyes gradually turned into curiosity and confusion. This was because the blue figure was not that terrifying and did not inspire fear in others. It was a woman. She wore a long blue dress that outlined her slender and graceful figure. Her face was graceful with a sense of gentleness. Her skin was snow-white and her eyes were like stars. One look at her and one could not help but sigh. She was as beautiful as a painting. However, what made Yi Guchen and the others faintly shocked was that the figure was not real. It was half illusory. Primordial spirit? Zither Fairy covered her red lips, her beautiful eyes filled with shock. How is this possible? On the other side, Pan Shuelyan, Fong Chen, and the others were also a little shocked. Even if a sky palace supremacy turned their consciousness into a soul palace, they could not give birth to a primordial spirit. A humanoid primordial spirit was a realm that only a higher-level expert could come into contact with. No, even if it is a primordial spirit, without special means, it will be worn down by time. How can it exist in the form of a primordial spirit? Zither Fairy was extremely shocked. She had read about this in the library of the Lingxi Palace when she had nothing to do. Just as everyone was puzzled by the sudden appearance of this strange figure, a figure suddenly appeared out of nowhere. The blue-robed woman who existed in the form of a primordial spirit spoke in a faint voice. 1,000 years since the Blue Bridge of Broken Love, June Wen's return has yet to be determined. Whoever crosses this bridge will be able to obtain my opportunity. With that, the blue-robed woman turned around. Her clothes fluttered, and her figure disappeared into the fog. It's the opportunity of the cave abode. As long as you cross this bridge, you can obtain it. At this moment, Pan Shuelyan, Fong Chen, Jiyan, and the others' eyes were burning with joy. In the beginning, their main goal was still Yi Guchen. After all, the opportunity with Yi Guchen was great. However, now that they saw the woman in the form of a primordial spirit, they all knew that the opportunity of the cave abode was absolutely precious. It was even a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. At this moment, even Prince Yuanyi temporarily put aside his hatred for Yi Guchen. The four of them directly rushed towards the dark blue stone bridge. Let's go too. Zither Fairy's beautiful eyes were also filled with excitement. Yiguchen nodded slightly. However, he knew that if they could obtain the opportunity as long as they could cross the stone bridge, it would be too simple. There must be a test on the stone bridge. Yiguchen was vigilant. He did not believe that this mysterious woman in the primordial spirit would give up the opportunity so easily. Xingzhu, you have to be careful. If you feel that it's dangerous, then stay here. Yiguchen turned to Mu Xingzhu and said, although the opportunity was good, it was not so easy to obtain. No. Xingzhu wants to try. Furthermore, Xingzhu feels that she shouldn't be a bad person, Mu Xingzhu said. All right, but safety first. Yiguchen nodded slightly and did not say anything. He did not have the right to help Mu Xingzhu make a choice. After that, Yiguchen and the other two stepped onto the dark blue stone bridge together. The moment they stepped onto the stone bridge, the blue crystal pendant on Mu Xingzhu's jade neck flashed with a faint light again. Chapter 309. Yiguchen stepped onto the dark blue stone bridge. He was surrounded by white fog. As far as the eye could see, it was boundless. As soon as Yiguchen stepped onto the stone bridge, he felt a terrifying soul pressure. However, it only lasted for a moment before it dissipated. Is it the primordial soul stage woman? Yiguchen was puzzled. Who was that woman? Why was she wandering around like a lonely soul? What was the meaning of the sentence, "Love is broken on the blue bridge for 1,000 years, June Wen's return is uncertain"? Why was her primordial soul able to remain intact for so long? All of these made Yiguchen curious. However, he only knew that the primordial soul stage woman's attainments in soul strength were definitely terrifying. Yiguchen even believed that if the blue-robed woman was willing, she would be able to destroy everyone's divine soul with her soul pressure in less than a breath's time. What kind of existence is a primordial soul? Yiguchen's eyes shone with a glimmer of light. The highest level of cultivation that he knew of was the Honorable Heavenly Palace. As for the higher levels, he was still unable to come into contact with them in the Saint Origin dynasty. However, this also made Yiguchen realize that there was always someone better than him. The road of cultivation was still very long. Suppressing the chaotic emotions in his heart, Yiguchen continued walking on the stone bridge. 15 minutes, half an hour, 2 hours. In the end, after walking for 6 hours, Yiguchen was still walking on the bridge. The front, the back, and the surroundings were all covered in fog. It was impossible to see anything clearly. Is this the test? Yiguchen was not surprised at all. Moreover, he was sure that this test should be related to one's state of mind and soul. This was because the primordial soul stage woman should be best at this. However, if it was any other test, Yiguchen might have some concerns. However, if it was a test of one's state of mind, Yiguchen could completely ignore it. Not to mention that Yiguchen's sword demon state of mind was incomparably tough. Coupled with the experience of the 9 lives of Azura in the 18-blood prison, Yiguchen's state of mind was like a diamond that could not be cracked. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. In the end, even Yiguchen did not know how long he had been walking. Perhaps he had walked for a day, perhaps a year, or perhaps 10 years. Of course, this was an illusion. Time was blurry. It was just a feeling. 1,000 years on the blue bridge of broken love. Do I really have to walk on this stone bridge for 1,000 years? Yiguchen thought about this and shook his head. He suddenly felt that the loneliness he was experiencing right now might be the same as what the blue-robed woman had experienced in the past. At this moment, 2 beautiful figures suddenly appeared in front of the stone bridge. They were hazy in the fog. Yiguchen slowly frowned with a trace of vigilance. However, when Yiguchen got closer and saw the 2 figures, even with his temperament, he could not help but reveal a faint look of astonishment on his face. These 2 beautiful figures were not Zither Fairy and Mu Xingzhu. Instead, they were 2 people that he had never expected to see. One of them was dressed in a snow-white dress and had an elegant and graceful figure. Her face was as bright as the moon, shining brightly. Her eyebrows were picturesque and her appearance was peerless. In particular, there was a trace of sadness and sorrow between her eyebrows. It was even more moving and unforgettable. "Situ Hongshue?" Yi Guchen's tone was a little shaky. His gaze turned to the other figure again. She was dressed in a green dress and her delicate figure was like a green lotus. She was full of fresh vitality. She had an oval-shaped face with white skin and curved eyebrows. Her eyes were as clear as a lake, and her tender red lips always had a warm and pure smile. As her footsteps moved, the silver bells on her fair ankles swayed along with her movements, emitting a series of crisp sounds. Who else could such a beautiful girl be but Su Jianshi? Yi Guchen pursed his lips slightly. He was not happy because of the appearance of these two beauties. At this moment, the ethereal voice of a woman came from the void. "If you choose the right person, you will succeed and pass this bridge. It's the primordial soul stage woman." Yi Guchen thought to himself when he heard this voice. He looked at the two beauties again. "If you choose the right person, you will succeed and pass this bridge." Yi Guchen slowly frowned. Although he knew that this was an illusion, Yi Guchen felt extremely complicated when facing these two beauties. There was helplessness and guilt. Although he was the sword devil and wielded a sword, it was difficult for him to break the entanglement of emotions. "Yi Guchen, I can overlook the mistakes you've made in the past. As long as you're willing to be with me." Situ Hongshue's voice was filled with sadness. She sounded extremely sorrowful, but at the same time, she was also filled with love. Su Jianshi placed her hands on her waist and pouted. She glanced at Yi Guchen and spoke with a voice as clear as a silver bell. "Silly boy, you said that you will be my vice leader. Are you going to break your promise?" "Situ Hongshue? Su Jianshi." Yi Guchen closed his eyes before opening them again. Yi Guchen felt guilty towards these two beauties. There was no need to mention Situ Hongshue. Even after knowing his identity as the Sword Devil of Bloodhark Tower, Situ Hongshue still didn't do anything to him. This was Yi Guchen's debt towards Situ Hongshue. As for Su Jianshi, she used her body to block Gu Xiaoyang's killing blow. It was also because of this blow that she remained unconscious until now. Yi Guchen also felt guilty. His eyes were like stars as he looked at the illusions of the two beauties before him. He could also vaguely feel that there seemed to be a pair of eyes watching him from the dark. This test and choice is truly difficult to understand. There is no perfect solution in this world that doesn't betray one's sword heart or love, but Yi Guchen suddenly took out his meteor sword. At this moment, his eyes were as sharp as a sword. "The sword heart is my heart and my heart is the sword heart. I will bear the responsibility for what I have done. This choice is not difficult for me, Yi Guchen." In the next moment, Yi Guchen unsheathed his sword. It was graceful and beautiful. It was very slow and gentle like a lover whispering to one's ear. With one slash, the illusion was destroyed. The illusions of Situ Hongshue and Su Jianshi smiled before disappearing. Then, the blue-clothed woman appeared in front of Yi Guchen. She slowly extended her jade-like hand and formed a sword with two fingers. Yi Guchen could sense a terrifying soul force from the blue-shirt lady. The ripple of her soul was even stronger than that of a martial highness. "What's the name of this sword?" The blue-clothed woman's beautiful face seemed to be in a daze as she stared at the sword. "If the heavens have emotions," Yi Guchen replied. "If the heavens have emotions, what a great name. If the heavens truly had emotions, why wouldn't they let him see me?" The blue-clothed woman smiled with tears in her eyes. Yi Guchen frowned slightly. He felt that the blue-clothed woman seemed to be someone with a story. He passed. The blue-clothed woman's figure disappeared. In the next moment, Yi Guchen was standing at the bridgehead. Chapter 310. Yi Guchen stood at the head of the bridge. For a moment he was still a little dazed. After all, he felt as if he had walked for a long time on the stone bridge. He turned his head. The dark blue stone bridge was still shrouded in a thick fog. However, under Yi Guchen's investigation, he was shocked to find that the white fog was actually an incomparably pure soul power. Such means, Yi Guchen could not help but sigh in his heart. He was moved by the blue-robed woman's means and strength. Senior brother Yi. Not far away, Mu Xingzu's figure suddenly appeared and rushed towards Yi Guchen. Yi Guchen's eyes flashed. After some investigation, he confirmed that Mu Xingzu was not an illusion. Xingzhu, have you passed the test? Yi Guchen was a little puzzled as he looked at Mu Xingzu in front of him. Even he had spent so much time here. However, from the looks of it, Mu Xingzhu seemed to have been here for a long time. Test? Test. Senior brother Yi, didn't you walk over directly from the bridge? Mu Xingzhu asked with a puzzled expression. Yi Guchen's eyes dimmed. He sensed that things were not as simple as they seemed. At this moment, in the pavilion at the foot of the barren mountain not far away, the blue-robed woman's figure appeared again. She leaned against the edge of the pavilion and looked at Yi Guchen, who was standing at the head of the bridge. It's her. Mu Xingzu was still surprised when she saw this, but she was no longer as fearful as before. A picturesque beauty like the blue-robed woman would only make people have a good impression of her. He sensed that the blue-robed woman's eyes seemed to be filled with deep affection and infatuation when she looked at him. This made Yi Guchen slowly frown. However, he was certain that although the blue-robed woman was looking at him, she was not looking at him. She was looking at someone in her memories. 8,000 years on the Blue Bridge, Jun Wen's return is uncertain. Ying Ning has been waiting for a very, very long time, but you still haven't returned. The blue-robed woman who called herself Ying Ning spoke as if she was talking to herself. Her eyes were filled with infatuation and reminiscence, as well as a faint trace of resentment. Yi Guchen and Mu Xingzu were smart enough not to disturb Ying Ning. After a long while, Ying Ning seemed to have regained her senses. The infatuation in her eyes dissipated and was replaced by clarity. She looked at Yi Guchen and Mu Xingzu and said, "Actually, passing the test of the stone bridge is just a formality. The real opportunity is already destined." Mu Xingzu looked puzzled. Yi Guchen's eyes flashed as if he had understood something. "You are the one who can obtain my opportunity." Ying Ning stretched out her finger and pointed at Mu Xingzu. "Me?" Mu Xingzu was stunned for a moment and couldn't come back to her senses. As expected, Yi Guchen was enlightened. When Mu Xingzu said that she had walked directly across the stone bridge, Yi Guchen had already noticed some clues. Don't you want to fight for it? After all, you used your own strength to pass the test. As for the others, they should still be struggling on the bridge. Ying Ning turned her gaze to Yi Guchen. I was entrusted by someone, so I don't have any thoughts about it, Yi Guchen said frankly. Don't speak too soon. Do you know what the opportunity I'm giving you is? After Ying Ning finished speaking, a spot of light suddenly appeared between her eyebrows. A transparent bead appeared from within. This bead was like a glass bead, but there was endless soul power rolling like fog inside it. This is... Yi Guchen looked at it. This is my innate divine ability as an 8th grade prodigy, the immortal soul bead, Ying Ning said. An 8th grade prodigy with an innate divine ability. Yi Guchen and Mu Xingzu were extremely surprised. The ranks of prodigies ranged from the 1st to the 9th grade, followed by the rarer 10th grade prodigy supreme. A 7th grade prodigy like Yi Guchen was considered rare in the entire Nantian region. As for 8th grade prodigies, they were even rarer. As for innate divine abilities, all prodigies above the 7th grade would have them. For example, Gu Xiaoyang's stellar eyes and Yi Guchen's innate sword embryo. This girl named Ying Ning's innate divine ability was the immortal soul bead that was stored in her mind. The innate divine ability of an 8th grade prodigy was an unimaginable opportunity. It was even more precious than obtaining swordsmanship or elixirs. Otherwise, Gu Xiaoyang wouldn't have gone through so much trouble to rob Yi Guchen of his innate sword embryo. Are you tempted? Ying Ning looked at Yi Guchen with a faint look in her eyes. Although it's precious, it belongs to the destined one, Yi Guchen said indifferently. Oh, right, I forgot that you're a sword cultivator. Then what about this? Ying Ning unleashed her soul power again. That intangible soul power seemed to burst forth with an unparalleled sword essence. That kind of sword essence didn't attack the physical body, but the soul. This is... Yi Guchen's eyes trembled again. This is a peerless soul sword essence, Ning said with a deep look in her eyes. An 8th grade prodigy, an immortal soul bead, and a peerless soul sword essence. No one could resist such a great opportunity. The immortal soul bead was undoubtedly beneficial to the cultivation of soul power. As for the soul sword essence, it could directly attack the soul in the sea of consciousness of others. It was strange and overbearing. Ning, even in the Void Sword sect in ancient times, I'm afraid she was an absolute god's favored daughter. Yi Guchen sighed secretly. You're Yi Guchen, right? As long as you get rid of the only opponent beside you, I might change my mind and pass on the immortal soul bead and the soul sword essence to you, Ning said faintly. Mu Xingzhu, who was standing to one side, was also a little hesitant. Then she mustered up her courage and said, Senior Brother Yi, Xingzhu thinks that these opportunities are most suitable for Senior Brother Yi, so if you need them, Xingzhu, in your eyes, am I such a person? Yi Guchen's eyes were incomparably calm as he turned to look at Ning. Senior, there's no need for such a test. To be honest, although sword essence is somewhat attractive to me, I don't lack sword essence. Yi Guchen's tone was indifferent. What he said was indeed the truth. Whether it was the edgeless sword essence or the 5-element sword essence that he might comprehend, Yi Guchen did not lack sword essences that he could comprehend. Of course, if it were under other possible circumstances, Yi Guchen would not mind obtaining the soul sword essence. However, under such circumstances, it was obviously not possible. I've underestimated you, but unfortunately, my opportunity can only belong to her. Ning looked at Mu Xingzhu with a hint of gentleness in her eyes. But why, Senior, how can Xingzhu? Mu Xingzhu was also a little confused. Because the heavenly sea soul essence hanging around your neck was given to me by him before he left. Ning's figure floated to the front of Mu Xingzhu and raised her hand slightly. The teardrop-shaped blue crystal pendant hanging around Mu Xingzhu's neck fell into Ning's hand. Chapter 311. Heavenly Sea Soul Marrow? Yi Guchen and Mu Xingzhu were both stunned for a moment. This blue crystal pendant was just an accessory that Mu Xingzhu happened to fancy at a stall. At that time, Mu Xingzhu did not realize that this pendant was extraordinary. She just liked it. Not to mention Mu Xingzhu, even Yi Guchen ignored this pendant before and did not notice its uniqueness. Ning held the heavenly sea soul marrow in her hand, and there was a trace of reminiscence and infatuation in her beautiful eyes. A smile unconsciously appeared at the corner of her mouth, which made her soft and beautiful face even more beautiful. Would you like to hear a story? Ning said in a faint tone. Yi Guchen and Mu Xingzhu were both silent, which meant that they agreed. Once upon a time, in the Void Sword sect, there was a God-favored girl. She was born extraordinary. She was an 8th-class God-favored girl, and her brain contained the immortal soul pearl. She was born with a soul that could turn into a primordial spirit. It was precisely because of this that this proud woman had always looked down on others, and no one could compare with her talent. Not a single man in the sect caught her eye. She even felt that perhaps she could only spend the rest of her life in boring cultivation by herself. Until one day, when she was cultivating outside, she met a man who was seriously injured. He was a sword practitioner, and the woman took pity on him and brought him back to the Void Sword sect. That man's surname was Yi. Ning said and looked at Yi Guchen. Yi Guchen's eyes revealed a strange light, and his mind moved slightly. He finally understood why Ning looked at him with that kind of reminiscence and infatuation when he was at the bridge. As the man's cultivation recovered, his strength gradually became known to the woman. The woman never knew that in this world, there was someone with higher talent and strength than her. The man's strength was very strong, and he could be called a God-favored one, but his character was very gentle. He was neither arrogant nor impatient, and there was always a warm smile on his face. Over time, the man and the woman spent a long time together. They watched the stars together on the green mountain, chatted casually in the pavilion, and watched the flowing water pass by on the stone bridge. Unknowingly, The woman had already fallen deeply in love with that man and was unable to extricate herself. Until one day, when the man's injuries were healed and his strength had increased, he was about to leave. He said that he came from Sky Mountain and will eventually return to Sky Mountain. This is his destiny. The woman refused. She wailed and cried. She felt as if a knife was being twisted in her heart. She never knew that this was how it felt to fall in love with someone. The man said, if two people love each other for a long time, there's no need to be together all the time. That day, the man stood at the bridge and said goodbye to the woman. He gave the woman a blue crystal pendant because he knew that the woman liked the color blue and always wore a blue dress. He also said that he would definitely come back. That was his vow. The woman looked at the man's back as he left. She held the blue crystal pendant in her hand and sobbed. From then on, the woman stood at the bridge, waiting and waiting. She waited until the sea turned into mulberry fields, until the mountains turned into barren mountains, until the rivers dried up, but he never came back. Later, the Void Sword sect experienced a great change. The woman died in the accident. Because of the immortal soul pearl, her primordial spirit could be preserved forever, but the blue crystal pendant was lost. After many years, the woman, who only had her primordial spirit left, wandered like a lonely soul all day long. She didn't leave, and she couldn't leave the Void Sword realm in the form of her primordial spirit. The most common thing she did was to stand at the bridge and faintly say, "The blue bridge has been broken for 1,000 years, and June has yet to return. You said that you would come back, but you broke your vow. And I turned into a lonely soul, standing at the bridge for 100 years, 1,000 years. The world has changed, the wind and rain has not changed, and I have always been waiting for your figure to appear." As Ying Ning spoke, her beautiful eyes looked faintly into the distance, and tears fell. Her tears were even clearer than the heavenly sea soul marrow. Sob, sob. Mu Xingzhu's face was covered in tears as she listened to the touching story. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Yi Guchen's face also had a trace of disappointment. After experiencing Situ Hongxue and Su Jianshi, he understood this feeling best. This might be the so-called fate playing tricks on people. This is my story. The tears at the corners of Ying Ning's eyes evaporated, and she held the heavenly sea soul marrow tightly. Yi Guchen's many doubts finally had an answer. "Senior Ying Ning, your story is too sad." Mu Xingzhu sobbed. "Sad? Maybe, but in my memories, I'm more happy with him," Ying Ning said, looking at Yi Guchen with her beautiful eyes. "Do you know, Yi Guchen, you are very much like him? Not only because both of you share the same surname, but also because both of you have the same temperament, a kind of pride that is as sharp as a sword. I think it is because of this that he decided to return to Sky Mountain." Yi Guchen's voice was filled with endless nostalgia. Sky Mountain? What kind of place is that? Yi Guchen was curious. He had always been curious about this predecessor who also had the surname Yi and was also a sword cultivator. "I don't know where Sky Mountain is, but from what he said, it is a mountain at the end of the Nantian region. A group of people who are crazy about swords live on the mountain, the end of the Nantian region." Yi Guchen frowned slightly. He thought of his vague memory of his father and what his aunt, Xuansu, had said. When you can defeat Gu Xiaoyang and truly step into the vast world of the Nantian region, you can find traces of your father. Surname Yi, Sky Mountain, father. Is it a coincidence, or is there a connection? Yi Guchen had more doubts. "Senior Ying Ning, what do you plan to do next?" Mu Xingzhu asked. "I want to pass on the immortal soul pearl and soul sword intent to you," Ying Ning said as she looked at Mu Xingzhu. "If you lose the immortal soul pearl, won't your primordial spirit collapse? If that's the case, I'd rather not have this opportunity," Mu Xingzhu said hurriedly. Hearing Mu Xingzhu's words, Ying Ning's eyes were filled with gentleness and satisfaction. She said, "It's no problem. You brought me this heavenly sea soul essence. After I pass on the immortal soul pearl to you, my primordial spirit will reside in the heavenly sea soul essence. In exchange, I will pass on the opportunity to you, but I need you to take me away from here and go to Sky Mountain to look for him." There seemed to be a hint of joy in Ying Ning's voice as she spoke. She did not care that he had broken his vow or that he had let her down for 1,000 years. She only wanted to preserve her remnant soul and go to Sky Mountain to see him again. She would be satisfied. Senior, as long as I have the ability, I will definitely help you. Mu Xingzu's eyes were still a little red as she clenched her fists. Ying Ning smiled faintly and nodded. She turned to look at Yi Guchen and said, Yi Guchen, although you can't get my opportunity, you have passed the test after all. If you have any needs, I will help you if possible. Yi Guchen pondered and said, I heard that there is the heavenly thunder in the Nether Sword realm. It is very important to me. Are you talking about the thunder tide? Ying Ning said faintly. Senior, you know about it? Yi Guchen's eyes lit up. The thunder tide is a training ground for the disciples of the sword faction. There is indeed the heavenly thunder in it. Now that things have changed, it is useless to leave the heavenly thunder there. Perhaps this item can help you obtain the heavenly thunder. Ying Ning waved her hand and a jade talisman fell into Yi Guchen's hand. Chapter 312. This is... Yi Guchen looked at the jade talisman in his hand. The surface of the jade talisman was silver and seemed to be engraved with thunder patterns. This is the guiding thunder talisman. It can absorb all kinds of thunder power. If you take this talisman and enter the depths of the thunder tide, you may have a chance to absorb the exotic thunder, Ying Ning said. Thank you, Senior. Yi Guchen put away the guiding thunder talisman. He was still thinking about how to absorb and refine the exotic thunder when he arrived at the thunder tide. Now that he had the guiding thunder talisman, the problem was solved. Ying Ning looked at Yi Guchen, her beautiful eyes shining. In the next moment, she took out the indestructible soul pearl again and performed a trick. A bead that was completely formed by soul power split from the indestructible soul pearl. The soul power generated by this pearl was far less than that of the indestructible soul pearl, but it was still very powerful. After doing this, Ying Ning seemed to be tired. Yi Guchen and Mu Xingzu were puzzled. This is the sub-pearl of the indestructible soul pearl. Although it doesn't have the characteristic of being indestructible, and its soul power is only 1% of the indestructible soul pearl, it's still a rare treasure. Yi Guchen, this is for you. Ying Ning waved her hand, and the sub-pearl directly disappeared between Yi Guchen's eyebrows. Yi Guchen immediately felt that the sub-pearl of the indestructible soul pearl was floating in his mind, constantly releasing warm and pure soul power. Obviously, this sub-pearl was very beneficial to the cultivation of soul power. Senior, why do you do this? Yi Guchen sighed. He could see the fatigue on Ying Ning's face after splitting the sub-pearl. Maybe it's because your temperament is very similar to his. Ying Ning looked at Yi Guchen, and the corners of her mouth curved into a smile. Senior, one of our companions is still trapped in the stone bridge, Mu Xingzu said hesitantly. Is it her? Ying Ning waved her hand again, and Zither Fairy's figure directly escaped from the stone bridge. This is... Zither Fairy's face was filled with confusion. After some explanation, Zither Fairy finally understood the whole story. Zither Fairy, what trial did you encounter on the stone bridge? Yi Guchen asked casually. Zither Fairy was silent. She glanced at Yi Guchen, and her beautiful face suddenly flushed with shyness. Then she lowered her eyelashes and said with a trace of panic, I didn't encounter anything. Yi Guchen nodded slightly and didn't say anything. You must be training in the way of the Guqin. Since you're Xingzhu's companion, I'll give you this Guqin. I'm going to leave this place anyway, so it's useless for me to keep it. Ying Ning waved her hand and a Guqin that shone with jade-green light landed before the Guqin Fairy. This is a supreme-grade mystical rune divine weapon. Zither Fairy's eyes were filled with joy. To her, this was already considered a very good opportunity. This trip was not in vain. All right, Xingzhu will stay here to pass on my immortal soul orb and soul sword essence. You can leave now. As for those trapped on the stone bridge, after you leave, I'll let them leave as well, Ying Ning said. Yi Guchen and the others nodded. Ying Ning promised to only release Pan Shuelyan and the others after they left. This was already considered taking care of them. As for letting Ying Ning kill Pan Shuelyan and the others, Yi Guchen wouldn't say such a thing. As long as he could obtain the unusual thunder and break through to the next level, Pan Shuelyan and the others were nothing in Yi Guchen's eyes. After that, Mu Xingzu followed Ying Ning into a cave in the barren mountain to pass on the opportunity. As for Yi Guchen and Zither Fairy, they were directly sent out of this place. Not long after, Pan Shuelyan and the others who were trapped on the stone bridge and failed the trial were also sent out of the stone bridge. Pan Shuelyan and the others suddenly realized that they were still on the other side of the bridge. At this moment, the dark blue stone bridge was bursting with light. Even the dried-up riverbed was rising with a series of lights, as if protecting the pavilion in the barren mountain. Pan Shuelyan and the others didn't look too good to begin with. However, when they felt the waves of soul fluctuations coming from the barren mountain, their faces became extremely pale. Someone has obtained the primordial soul lady's inheritance. Pan Shuelyan was so angry that her ample chest heaved up and down. She gritted her teeth. Obviously, their plan had failed again. Not only did they fail to obtain the primordial soul lady's inheritance, but they also lost track of Yi Guchen. Whether it's Yi Guchen, Zither Fairy, or that girl in the Qi refinement realm, whoever obtained the inheritance is detestable. Prince Yuani's face was also extremely gloomy. This time, they had suffered a double loss. They came here for nothing and gained nothing. Are you all willing to leave just like this? Pan Shuelyan's beautiful eyes flashed with a bitter cold light. What else can we do? This place has been sealed and we can't enter. We're destined to not obtain the opportunity and inheritance, Feng Chen said coldly. Even if we can't obtain it, we can't let Yi Guchen and the others get it. If we spread the news about this place... Pan Shuelyan's tone was inexplicable. If everyone knows about this place, it'll be difficult for us to obtain the opportunity, Prince Yuani said with a frown. So what? Anyway, we can't find them now. Let's spread the news and ask everyone to come here and besiege them. I don't believe that Yi Guchen and the others can escape. Pan Shuelyan's tone was very vicious. Although she was beautiful, she had a vicious heart. Fine, that's all we can do. Even if we can't obtain the opportunity, if we can kill Yi Guchen and the others, we'll have gained something. Prince Yuani thought about it and finally agreed. All right then. The four of us will spread the news separately. I'm sure there'll be a good show to watch soon. Pan Shuelyan's face was full of strategizing, treating Yi Guchen and the others as turtles in a jar. After a round of discussion, the four of them scattered in different directions. Vaguely, there seemed to be dark clouds gathering and a storm was about to rise. On the other side, Yi Guchen and Zither Fairy had already left the stone bridge. Young Master Yi, what are you going to do next? Zither Fairy asked. My original purpose in coming to the Void Sword realm was to find the heavenly thunder. Next, I should be going to the Thunder Tide, Yi Guchen said in a low voice. Then Zither Fairy can go with young Master Yi, Zither Fairy said. Yi Guchen nodded. Although the Zither Fairy was not on the same level as Qin Yi or Ji Ling, she was not considered weak either. Furthermore, she had received a supreme-grade mystical pattern divine weapon, the ancient Zither, from Ying Ning. Her strength had also increased greatly. Then, Yi Guchen took out a communication jade slip and contacted Yi Xie and the others. Sword Master Yi, you're fine? Yi Xie sent a message. Let's find a place to meet up and then go to the Thunder Tide, Yi Guchen said. Then Yi Guchen and Yi Xie decided on a place. He and Zither Fairy rushed to the place where they would meet up with Yi Xie. On the other side, there were also 3 figures flying towards the area where the lightning tide was. The person in the lead had long black hair and carried black and white swords on his back. He looked down on everything. It was Xian Hao of the Limitless Sword Sect. Chapter 313. At this moment, the emotionless expression on Xian Hao's face had disappeared and was replaced by a faint gloominess. Previously, he was guarding the periphery of the formation. After the formation stabilized, he did not see Yi Guchen's figure. Xianhao was unable to determine whether Yi Guqin had been blasted into smithereens by the formation or if he had luckily escaped through a teleportation formation. However, no matter what the result was, Xianhao was unable to accept it. As the top genius of the Limitless Sword Sect's Sun Moon Hall, there were very few geniuses in the entire Saint Origin dynasty who could be compared to him. It could be said that Xianhao had always been admired by everyone throughout his cultivation journey. He had never encountered any setbacks or losses. However, in the Void Sword realm, Yi Guqin, whose true qi had been crippled, had snatched away his opportunities twice in a row. No matter if it was the king-level sword art or the bronze pill furnace, they were both great opportunities. Before Yan Wushuang, Gu Zun, the young war emperor and the others came, Xianhao thought that no one could compete with him. However, in his eyes Yi Guqin, who was like an ant, had snatched his opportunities time and time again. Even someone as calm as Xianhao did not have a good expression on his face. However, the only thing that comforted him was that there was still an opportunity waiting for him in another place. If Yi Guqin is still alive, he won't be able to escape from me. However, I still have to go and collect the unusual lightning. If what Xianmo said is true, the unusual lightning should be similar to the sword art. It is very compatible with my void sword essence, Xianhao thought. He turned his head to look at Xianmo and said indifferently, Xianmo, are you sure it's in this direction? Yes, yes. Xianmo quickly nodded when he felt Xianhao's cold tone. His back was drenched in cold sweat. He knew that Xianhao's mood was definitely not good. As for the remaining person, it was Murong Ditian. After Xianhao entered the lightning tide, he and Xianmo would guard the periphery. However, Murong Ditian's face was dejected and he did not have the arrogance of the top genius of the Beichen mansion. Xianhao glanced at Murong Ditian indifferently and ignored him. On the other side, Yi Guqin and Zither Fairy finally met up with Yi Xie in a desolate forest. Yi Guqin, let's go quickly. No one should have been there yet. Yi Xie saw Yi Guqin and Zither Fairy arrive and said. Yi Guqin nodded. Without any hesitation, he followed Yi Xie's lead and rushed towards the lightning tide area. In a polar region near the edge of the Void Sword realm, there was a mountain peak that was more than 10,000 feet high. There wasn't a single rock or plant on this mountain peak. Its entire body seemed to be made of silver, as if it was made of silver metal. Around this silver mountain, the ground was also silvery white. There were no demonic beasts, no plants, and of course, no one would come here. Dark clouds gathered at the top of the silver mountain all year round. Thunder rumbled as countless bolts of lightning struck the mountain from the dark clouds. The silver metal mountains seemed to be able to conduct electricity. The surging power of lightning flowed down the mountain peak like a tide and finally landed on the surrounding ground. The scene was majestic and strange. Not long after, 3 figures appeared at the periphery of the mountain peak. They were Yi Guqin and the other 2. Luckily, no one else came here. Yi Xie looked around and said, Is that the lightning tide area? Yi Guqin saw the silver mountain peak at a glance. The power of lightning was like a waterfall, rushing down from the top of the mountain. At a glance, this scene really did look like a thunder tide waterfall. I think the heavenly thunder should be in the dark clouds at the top of the mountain. Yi Xie guessed. Yi Guqin nodded in agreement. He also knew why there were so few people in the lightning tide area. There was nothing worth exploring in the surroundings. Moreover, the lightning tide was so fierce that ordinary people could not withstand it. According to Ying Ning, the lightning tide area was a training ground. Obviously, it was not so easy to reach the top of the mountain. But no matter what, Yi Guqin would not give up, because the heavenly thunder was his only hope of breaking through. Let's go! Yi Guqin did not hesitate and rushed towards the silver mountain with Yi Xie and Qin Fairy. The closer they got to the silver mountain, the more Yi Guqin could feel the numbness coming from the soles of his feet. It's still so far away, but I already have this feeling. It seems that the heavenly thunder should be stronger than the purple lightning nether thunder. Yi Guqin's eyes were filled with excitement. As long as this heavenly thunder was stronger than the purple lightning nether thunder, then he had a high chance of breaking through. The closer they got to the silver mountain, the stronger the power of the lightning became. Finally, Yiguchen and the others finally reached the foot of the mountain. At this point, the power of lightning had already rushed down like a tide. Even Yixie and Zither Fairy needed to spread out their true qi to resist this power. Although Yiguchen could not use his genuine qi, the power of lightning could be used to temper his body. Yiguchen, just like this, withstanding the power of lightning, rushed towards the top of the mountain. I actually feel that my genuine qi is becoming more and more pure under the power of lightning. Yixie's eyes were filled with a strange light as he said in surprise. I can feel it too. This is indeed a rare place to train. Zither Fairy also spoke, her tone filled with surprise. Yiguchen's body was also tempered. His whole body was numb, and his muscles and bones became more compact and strong under this kind of tempering. And just when Yiguchen and the others had climbed about 1/5 of the way up the mountain, outside the giant mountain, 3 figures flew over. It was Xian Hao and the other 2. That person is... Xian Hao and the others saw the 3 people who were climbing the giant mountain at a glance. They almost completely ignored Yixie and Qin Fairy, and their gazes were all focused on Yiguchen alone. When Murong Ditian saw Yiguchen's figure, his aura burst out uncontrollably. His eyes instantly turned blood red, and he spoke word by word as if he wanted to eat Yiguchen's flesh and blood. His hatred for Yiguchen was already so deep that it could not be washed away even with all the water in the 5 seas. It was a hatred that would not end until one of them was dead. However, Xian Hao's face did not have the slightest bit of anger. Instead, it had a trace of unexpected joy. Yiguchen, you didn't die. This is really delightful. I thought that you would die in that formation and not even ashes would remain. But this is also good. I will take back the opportunity that belongs to me. Xian Hao revealed a trace of a rare smile, and his smile was very carefree. He had thought that Yiguchen had died and his Dao had dissipated, along with his opportunity. But now that he saw that Yiguchen was actually still alive and right in front of him, how could Xian Hao not be happy? He could not be happier. It's Xian Hao. When Yixie and the others saw this, their expressions changed abruptly. He also saw Xian Mo behind Xian Hao, and he knew that it must be Xian Mo who told Xian Hao that there was heavenly thunder here. Let's go up. Facing such a dangerous situation, Yiguchen's expression did not have the slightest bit of panic. He sped up and flew towards the top of the giant silver mountain. Yiguchen, you are just a turtle in a jar. Xian Hao and the others also started to fly up from the bottom of the giant mountain. Chapter 3:14. The silver giant peak was silver-white all over and was shining brightly. And in the dark clouds above the peak, thunder rolled, and endless thunder fell like a waterfall, endlessly crashing down from the peak like a torrent. Yiguchen and the other 2 were in front, while Xian Hao and the other 2 were chasing after them from behind. As their figures were getting higher and higher, Yixie and Zither Fairy gradually had sweat on their faces, and the genuine qi in their Dantian Sea of Qi seemed to be faintly exhausted. On the other hand, Yiguchen was under greater pressure at the moment because he could not use genuine qi to block it. Now he was relying on the strength of his perfect body to persist until now. Behind them, Xian Hao's speed was very fast. The turbulent genuine qi of his divine soul 9 changes spread out, making him like a cannonball, quickly flying up against the thunder tide. Behind him, Xian Mo and Murong Ditian were slightly slower. Yiguchen, you are just doing useless work now. Xian Hao's face was full of confidence. He seemed to have seen the scene where he killed Yiguchen and then took the king-level sword art and the bronze furnace. It is still unknown who will win. Yiguchen said coldly without a trace of fear. Oh, the struggle of an ant. Xian Hao did not say anything more, and his speed increased again. As time went by, they were getting closer and closer to the peak. Yiguchen and the others had already climbed 3/5 of the entire silver giant peak, and there were still 2/5 of the way to the peak. However, at this point, the impact of the thunder tide they had to endure was even more intense than the thunder tide they had to endure before. Because this place of Thundertide was originally the place where the disciples of the Void Sword sect practiced in ancient times. The higher they went, the greater the pressure and impact. Lord Yi, I feel a little weak. Beside Yi Guchen, Zither Fairy was a little breathless, and said with difficulty. Her beautiful face was a little pale at the moment, and her body was dripping with sweat. The genuine qi that spread out was much weaker than before. Not only was Zither Fairy like this, Yi Xie on the other side was also starting to become unstable and unable to hold on. As for Yi Guchen, although he was also enduring the extreme impact of the lightning tide, he was still able to withstand it with his willpower and temperament. Yi Guchen also discovered that as the power of thunder and lightning struck his body, his perfect body seemed to have developed some resistance. He now had some adaptability and resistance. If you can't hold on any longer, escape to the left and right, Yi Guchen said in a low voice. Hearing this, Yi Xie and Zither Fairy both secretly nodded. They knew that Yi Guchen was afraid that Xian Hao would capture them and use them to threaten Yi Guchen. As long as Yi Guchen and Zither Fairy could safely escape, then Yi Guchen would naturally have his own methods to deal with Xian Hao. Young Master Yi Guchen, you must be careful. Zither Fairy's beautiful eyes looked at Yi Guchen with a hint of hidden emotion. She didn't tell Yi Guchen what test she encountered in the illusion on the stone bridge. In fact, Zither Fairy didn't encounter any test. She was just immersed in the illusion and leaning on the shoulder of a young man. As for that young man, he was so close to her, yet so difficult to reach. Perhaps only young Master Yi has such courage to face Xian Hao in this state without retreating at all. Zither Fairy sighed in her heart. She found that compared to Yi Guchen, those geniuses who fawned over her were so unbearable. However, Zither Fairy didn't say anything in the end. Her feelings were just like her gentleness, silent and speechless. Yi Guchen looked at Zither Fairy, and a light flashed in his eyes. He sighed in his heart. But he didn't say anything. Many times, not saying anything was actually a kind of help. Master Yi Jinzong, be careful, Yi Xie said. Then Yi Xie and Zither Fairy retreated in two different directions, one left and one right. As for Yi Guchen, he didn't show any signs of leaving and continued to ascend the mountain peak. At the back, Xian Hao saw this and smiled faintly. Yi Guchen, are you prepared to give it your all? That's good too. He turned and said to Xian Mo and Murong Ditian, you two go chase after those two. As for Yi Guchen, let me deal with him. But Murong Ditian's expression froze, and his eyes were filled with unwillingness. Xian Hao's eyes darkened as he looked at Murong Ditian. Yes. Veins popped out on Murong Ditian's forehead. He gritted his teeth and clenched his fists. He lowered his head slightly, and a trace of bone-deep jealousy flashed in his eyes. Not only Yi Guchen, but also you. Xian Hao, one day I will let you have a taste of being stepped on by others. Murong Ditian roared in his heart. After that, Xian Mo and Murong Ditian chased after Yi Xie and Zither Fairy respectively. Xian Hao, on the other hand, had an indifferent and relaxed expression. He was like a cat playing with a mouse as he stared at Yi Guchen. There's still 1/5 of the distance left. Yi Guchen slowly raised his head, and there was a trace of fatigue in his tone. The power of lightning here was already extremely strong. If it was an ordinary divine soul expert, he or she would be instantly swept down and be severely injured. Indestructible diamond body. At this point, Yi Guchen couldn't withstand it with just his perfect physical body. Thus, he directly activated the indestructible diamond body. Golden light burst out from his body, and he was like a golden god of war. His aura rose again, and he continued to ascend the mountain peak. Interesting. Xian Hao's eyes flashed when he saw this. Yi Guchen's physical body and body refinement technique surprised him. However, Xian Hao's expression was still calm. He didn't think that Yi Guchen would escape from his control. Finally, Yi Guchen was only 100 feet away from the mountain peak. However, this 100 feet seemed to be even longer than the previous distance added together. Because this was very close to the mountain peak, it was naturally the place where the power of lightning was the most violent and explosive. Yi Guchen, What other tricks do you have? Xianhao shook his head and smiled. Yi Guchen's eyes focused. In the next moment he activated the power of the five-colored golden core in his dantian. Buzz buzz, the five-colored golden core trembled violently, and then a burst of 5 elements totem power gushed out. Among them, the fire element totem power representing the vermilion bird was the strongest, followed by the wood element totem power of the azure dragon totem. Other than that, the white tiger totem, the black tortoise totem, and the soaring snake totem were about the same. They only had a small portion of power. This was because Prince Yuani's heavenly sacred 5-element will contained limited 5 elements mystic power. Rumble. When Yi Guchen activated the 5-colored golden core, a 5-colored divine radiance suddenly appeared on the surface of his body, making him look like a celestial being. With the power of the 5-colored totem, Yi Guchen speed soared again, and he swept directly toward the mountain peak. It's the power of the totem, but why? Xianhao's calm face was also filled with surprise. Although he had come into contact with the power of the totem in the battle with the barbarian tribe Holy Sons and Holy Daughters, he did not have a deep understanding of it. However, the totem power that emerged from Yi Guchen's body at this moment surprised Xianhao. That was because the totem power gave off a very pure feeling. No matter what tricks you play, in the end, all the opportunities will belong to me, Xianhao. Xianhao snorted coldly, and the aura of the 9 changes of the godly soul completely erupted. At the same time, the peerless void sword essence and another slightly vague sword essence also erupted at the same time. Swoosh! Xianhao's body flashed in the void, and as he streaked across the air, there was an ear-piercing explosion. At this moment, Yi Guchen and Xianhao stepped onto the giant silver mountain peak almost at the same time. The heavenly thunder was close at hand. Chapter 3:15. Boom! Just as Yi Guchen stepped on the top of the silver giant peak, Xianhao also stepped on it. The moment they stepped onto the peak, the entire silver mountain trembled violently and let out a rumbling sound. This roaring vibration was like a kind of recognition. It represented that Yi Guchen and Xianhao were extraordinarily talented. Because even in the ancient Void Sword sect, there were not many geniuses who could reach the top. However, being able to reach the top did not mean that Yi Guchen and Xianhao's test was over. In fact, until this moment, the real test had just begun. Rumble. Above the silver giant peak, where the dark clouds gathered, the fierce thunder rolled like an angry dragon, as if Yi Guchen and Xianhao's reaching the top was a kind of blasphemy to its strength. Boom! Almost endless silver thunder and lightning poured from the dark clouds at an extremely fast speed, as if it was breaking the void, or as if a large river had broken its banks. The vast and boundless thunder tide was like the overturning of the Milky Way, pouring down on Yi Guchen and Xianhao who were on the silver peak. Sure enough, it's the extreme void mysterious thunder. Seeing this, Xianhao's calm face also showed a touch of unconcealable joy. Extreme void mysterious thunder? Not far away, Yi Guchen heard this and his eyes lit up. Among the exotic thunders of heaven and earth, the exotic thunders that could be called mysterious thunder were rare and powerful types, just like Qin Aoshi's 9th heaven mysterious thunder. Extreme void mysterious thunder, silver and blazing, with extreme speed, thunder like a dragon, breaking the void. At this moment, Xianhao's eyes were blazing. This extreme void mysterious thunder was also very compatible with his void sword essence attribute. This exotic thunder was naturally prepared for me. Xianhao's long black and white hair fluttered, and his eyes were blazing. On the other side, Yi Guchen's eyes were dignified, and at the same time, he was determined to get this extreme void mysterious thunder. Only by getting the exotic thunder can I unlock the seal of the Qi Sea. Only by getting the exotic thunder can I break through the cultivation realm. Only by obtaining the heavenly thunder can I completely pass the sea of Qi tribulation and cultivate the sea of Qi tribulation. So, even the heavens are unable to stop my sword sect today. At this moment, Yi Guchen also unleashed his aura, his eyes filled with disdain. What he and Xianhao were fighting for was this slim chance. Rumble. The lightning tide, which was as frightening as a heavenly river, finally descended. Yi Guqin instantly erupted with all his strength. Perfect physical body, Dracophant force, vigorous chi and blood, indestructible diamond body, 5-colored totem force, even the hard-soft sword essence, the Azura sword essence, and even the embryonic form of the fire sword essence. There was also the incomparably powerful soul power and the bead that Ing Ning had given him in the center of his mind. At that moment, Yi Guqin used all the techniques he could think of, except for the vital energy that he couldn't use. Boom! An incomparably ferocious aura spread out from Yi Guqin's body, forming a dazzling barrier that collided with the boundless violent lightning tide. Almost at the moment of collision, Yi Guqin's figure was blasted back by dozens of feet. He spat out vermilion blood, dripping down his chin. However, his feet were still firmly planted into the ground, like a plant rooted to the ground, stabilizing his body. Yi Guqin knew that if he was blasted down from the peak by the lightning tide, he would no longer have the chance to fight for the ultimate void profound bomb. On the other side, Xian Hao was also violently attacked by the lightning tide. He also tried his best to use his own techniques, the powerful vital energy of the 9 changes of the godly soul, the soul power of the sea of consciousness, the sword essence of the void, and even another vague sword essence. Even the black and white swords on his back, the dark Yin sword and the dark Yang sword, were used. The 2 swords crossed, blocking in front of Xian Hao like a shield. Even so, Xian Hao was still affected, and some blood flowed down from the corner of his mouth. What a ferocious lightning tide, as expected of the ultimate void profound bomb. Yi Guqin must have been blasted down, but it doesn't matter. It won't be too late to catch him after I obtain the ultimate void profound bomb. Just as Xian Hao was thinking this, he turned his head slightly and saw Yi Guqin, who was clenching his teeth and persevering in the lightning tide. How is it possible? Xian Hao's eyes were filled with shock and confusion. One had to know that he and Yi Guqin were almost an entire realm apart. One was at the 9 changes of the godly soul, while the other was at the 9 refinement chi refinement realm. Even Xian Hao found it very difficult to withstand the ferocious lightning tide in front of him. Logically speaking, Yi Guqin should not have been able to withstand it. Why? The shock in Xian Hao's eyes turned into a serious look. That's right. Before this, Xian Hao had never looked Yi Guqin in the eye. Even though Yi Guqin had taken his opportunity, Xian Hao only thought that Yi Guqin was lucky and opportunistic. But now, Xian Hao had really begun to take Yi Guqin seriously and regarded him as an opponent. Yi Guqin, you have indeed exceeded my expectations, but this time, the outcome will not change. Xian Hao ignored Yi Guqin for the time being. He wanted to obtain the ultimate void profound bomb first, and then deal with Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin did not reply. In fact, he did not have the extra energy to speak. He only continued to move forward, slowly approaching the area directly below the dark clouds. Of course, that place was naturally the core of the lightning tide. The terrifying lightning power seemed to be able to tear everything apart. The ultimate void profound bomb was domineering to begin with. It possessed the speed of lightning and could shake the void at the same time. Xian Hao's figure had long surpassed Yi Guqin, and he was getting closer and closer to the area where the dark clouds gathered. On the other hand, although Yi Guqin had many moves at his disposal, he did not have true chi after all. His totemic power was only at the beginning, and he had not formed a sea of consciousness in his mind. Therefore, at this moment, Yi Guqin could not hold on any longer. The surface of his body had been cut by the ultimate void profound bomb, and blood was flowing out. His chest had been struck by the lightning, and it was charred black. The closer he got to the area where the dark clouds gathered, the more wounds there were on his body. From afar, he looked like a bloody man, and it was incomparably terrifying. At this moment, even Xian Hao looked at Yi Guqin with a trace of fear in his eyes. If an opponent only had a high cultivation level, that was not frightening. What was frightening was that this opponent also had inhuman tenacity and courage. That was what made one fearful. Yi Guqin, even I, Xian Hao, admire you for being able to hold on until now. Unfortunately, tenacity alone is not enough to accomplish anything. Xian Hao did not delay any longer and directly unleashed his strength to the limit. His figure suddenly flickered, and then directly approached the area where the dark clouds gathered. The ultimate void profound bomb is in my hands. Xian Hao took out an ancient talisman. This ancient talisman manifested its power within the lightning and released a strange guiding force, as if it wanted to absorb the ultimate void profound bomb in the dark clouds. This was naturally something that Xian Hao had prepared long ago to contain the ultimate void profound bomb. As the talisman was taken out, a ball of silver lightning within the dark clouds was also drawn down. The boundless lightning in the void was released from this ball of lightning. This ball of lightning was blazing with silver light. As lightning flashed, the void shook, and it sounded like an angry dragon. However, it was gradually drawn towards the ancient talisman. Yiguchen, this time, the dust has settled. Xian Hao could not help but laugh heartily. Previously, Xian Hao had suffered 2 losses at Yiguchen's hands, and a trace of flaw had appeared in his Dao heart. However, this time, Xian Hao finally breathed a sigh of relief. The opportunity of the ultimate void profound bomb belonged to him. I, Yiguchen, will seize this bomb today. No one can stop me. Yiguchen's eyes seemed to burn with flames. His blood and qi completely roared, and all of his power was released. There was a loud boom. A pair of boundlessly gorgeous fire wings were released from Yiguchen's back. He directly rose into the air and faced the ball of silver lightning. Like a moth to a flame, he charged forward. Chapter 316. Yiguchen, you're courting death. The scene before his eyes was beyond Xian Hao's expectations. Even with his indifferent nature, there was a trace of surprise on his face. The fire wings on Yiguchen's back flapped, causing him to shoot towards the core of the extreme void profound bomb like a blazing meteor. This was akin to a moth flying into a flame. In Xian Hao's eyes, it was an act of courting death. Without any tricks or preparation, he directly approached the violent variant lightning. Moreover, it was the profound lightning which was even more powerful. Even Xian Hao would not be able to do it, because the instant he approached the profound lightning, he would be drowned by the lightning. However, Yiguchen did not care about his own safety and forcefully approached the extreme void profound bomb. In Xian Hao's eyes, this was an extremely foolish and overconfident act. Yiguchen, if you are really so foolish, then I have overestimated you. Xian Hao shook his head slightly with a sigh. Xian Hao had to admit that if they were at the same level, Yiguchen would be his greatest enemy. Unfortunately, just as Xian Hao was sighing, Yiguchen had already approached the silver lightning. Rumble. The variant lightning was born from heaven and earth and was an ownerless object. The moment Yiguchen approached, it naturally attracted the extreme void profound bomb's instinctive counterattack. Streaks of silver lightning were like silver whips that ruthlessly lashed towards Yiguchen's body. Even with various tricks, Yiguchen was still shaken to the point of coughing up blood. Scorch marks covered his entire body. No, it's not close enough. I need to be 100% confident. Yiguchen thought to himself. He did not care how injured he was. He only knew that he only had one chance to seize the extreme void profound bomb. If he failed, the extreme void profound bomb would be completely absorbed by the ancient talisman and then taken away by Xian Hao. At that time, Yiguchen would no longer have the slightest chance to seize the variant lightning from Xian Hao. How pitiful! There was a faint trace of pity in Xian Hao's eyes as he looked at Yiguchen, who was getting closer and closer to the extreme void profound bomb. It was like a winner's pity for a loser. I have the Na Lei talisman. Even if you're like a moth flying into a flame, you'll only end up losing your life in the end. Xian Hao sighed. In the end, Yiguchen's figure was only 10 feet away from the extreme void profound bomb. Just as the thunderous energy of the extreme void profound bomb was about to explode and drown Yiguchen. Yiguchen took out the guiding lightning talisman that Ying Ning had given him. Boom! Endless silver lightning flooded the area. Seeing Yiguchen's figure buried in the lightning, Xian Hao shook his head slightly and sighed. That sigh seemed to be a pity for the death of an opponent. Yi Guchen from the sword sect, I, Xian Hao, admit that if your cultivation was similar to mine, then you would be a great enemy of mine. However, it's already impossible now. Xian Hao poured all of his true qi into the Na Lei talisman, wanting to completely absorb the extreme void profound bomb. However, at this moment, the surging lightning that filled the sky seemed to abruptly shrink back like a receding tide. Xian Hao's eyes revealed a strange expression. The scene before him left him somewhat puzzled and confused. However, in the next moment, Xian Hao's gaze froze. His pupils abruptly contracted as he watched the figure that should have been torn apart by the lightning appear. The surging lightning that filled the sky converged towards the silver jade talisman in Yi Guchen's hand like 100 rivers returning to the sea. The suction force emitted by the silver jade talisman was actually more than 10 times stronger than Xian Hao's Na Lei talisman. After all, the guiding lightning talisman was a gift from Ying Ning. Its effect naturally far surpassed Xian Hao's Na Lei talisman. In the short span of a few breaths, the silver ball of light and the lightning that filled the sky were all sucked into the guiding lightning talisman. The dark clouds that had gathered at the peak also dissipated at this moment. It was as if sunlight had shone down on Yi Guchen's body that was covered in wounds. At this moment, a crack seemed to have appeared in Xian Hao's Dao heart as he looked at the youth in the air. Yi Guchen glanced at Xian Hao and did not say anything unnecessary. He directly put away the guiding lightning talisman, flapped the vermilion bird wings, and shot towards the distant sky. Xian Hao seemed to have yet to recover his senses. His face was frozen and his eyes were wooden. The pity and sigh he had for Yi Guchen just now had not even dissipated. However, Yi Guchen's figure had already flown far away, along with the extreme void fire profound bomb. How hateful! Yi Guchen! Xian Hao only managed to catch his breath after a few breaths of time. Xian Hao, who had always been indifferent and condescending, gradually turned ashen and purplish at this moment. As the saying went, things should not be done more than 3 times. However, Xian Hao had the great void fire sword wave, the bronze pill cauldron, and the extreme void fire profound bomb. The 3 great opportunities that Xian Hao had been determined to obtain had all been snatched away by Yi Guchen. Xian Hao had thought that Yi Guchen had gotten lucky the first 2 times. However, no one had interfered in the 3rd time. It was just the 2 of them, Yi Guchen. And Yi Guchen had still snatched away the opportunities that had originally belonged to him right under his nose. Yi Guchen, even if you flee to the ends of the earth, you will not be able to escape. Xian Hao's eyes were tinged with a trace of blood red. He directly grabbed a large number of pills that replenished qi from his origin ring and stuffed them into his mouth. Then, he activated the sword will of the void and shot towards Yi Guchen at top speed. If he could not catch up to Yi Guchen, if he could not snatch back the opportunities that belonged to him from Yi Guchen's hands, then there would always be a crack in Xian Hao's cultivation Dao heart. This crack might not be able to cause too much of an impact now. However, in the future, when he tried to break through to a higher realm, it would create a heart demon, which would be a huge problem. In the air, a figure with a pair of wings on his back streaked across the sky like a meteor, flying into the distance. Not far behind him, on the ground, a human figure was following closely behind with a ghostly speed. It was as if he was shuttling through the void. This scene was too eye-catching, and it was impossible to hide. Especially Yi Guchen, who was flying in the air. He was like a clear target as he flew over, attracting the attention of disciples from various sections. There's actually someone in the air. Could it be an expert in the life and death chamber? No. Those wings, it's Yi Guchen from the sword sect. Yi Guchen, the Yi Guchen who had lost all his qi but obtained a great opportunity? I heard that he took away all the bronze pill cauldrons from the pill palace. There are saint pills inside. As the commotion grew bigger and bigger, not only Xian Hao, those who were attracted by Yi Guchen's figure were also chasing after Yi Guchen. In less than an hour, a large group of martial artists had gathered behind Yi Guchen. There were martial artists from various sects and clans. These people had the same thought, which was to seize the opportunity in Yi Guchen's hands. On the other hand, Xian Hao did not pay any attention to these people who were following him. This was because there was only one goal in his bloodshot eyes. It was Yiguchen. Yiguchen, you've caused a crack in my cultivation Dao heart. The only way to fix it is to seize all the opportunities you've obtained from your hands. Yiguchen had completely become Xianhao's obsession. With so many people following behind me, it's impossible to find a place to break through in peace. Sensing the large group of people behind him, including Xianhao, Yiguchen frowned slightly. He swallowed a large amount of healing pellets from the bronze pill cauldron, as well as some pellets to recover his qi. Only then was he able to hold on. However, this was not a long-term solution. Regardless of the others, Xianhao alone was enough to pose a fatal threat to Yiguchen. Just as Yiguchen was thinking about his next move, the continuous mountain range and desolate forest in front of him suddenly disappeared. What replaced it was a sea that seemed to have no end. The sea was not an ordinary color, but pure gold. A golden sea. Could that be? Yiguchen's eyes flashed with light. Chapter 317. Before entering the Void Sword realm, Chu Qingqi had told Yiguchen about the 3 places of opportunity in the Void Sword realm. The Sword Pavilion and the Pill Hall were needless to say, as Yiguchen had already experienced them. The 3rd place of opportunity was the Creation Golden Pool. Until now, looking at the Golden Sea before him, Yiguchen realized that it was the Creation Golden Pool. The Creation Golden Pool was a famous place of opportunity in the Void Sword realm. It was rumored that the golden liquid had a strong effect of tempering the body. Of course, the golden liquid also had a strange characteristic. It was very thick and heavy, like mercury. Anyone who entered the Creation Golden Pool would have to bear such a great pressure. The so-called tempering of the body was to gradually seep the golden liquid into the body under such pressure, gradually changing the skin, tendons, bones, organs, and so on. Although the Creation Golden Pool was called a pool, it was like a vast ocean. The deeper one went, the stronger the tempering power. However, most people's bodies couldn't bear the pressure and could only cultivate in the periphery. At that moment, Yiguchen looked over and saw that there were many figures in the Golden Ocean. Most of them were cultivating on the spot, allowing the Golden Ocean to wash over them. Other than that, there was a small number of geniuses who swam deeper into the Golden Ocean. I can use this opportunity to get rid of the trouble. Yiguchen's eyes flashed. He flapped his wings and flew in the direction of the Fortune Golden Pool. His arrival naturally attracted the attention of some people who were already in the Creation Golden Pool. That's Yiguchen from the Sword Sect. He's actually not dead yet. Wasn't it rumored that he was being chased by Xianhao? Xianhao is behind him. He actually caught up. But why does he look so angry? Yiguchen, Xianhao, and a large group of people who were chasing after him had all arrived at the Creation Golden Pool. This caused the warriors who were originally in the Creation Golden Pool to be shocked and puzzled. Yiguchen. There were also some old faces in the Fortune Gold Pool. Demon Blade Nieling, Blood Blade Mo Juechen, and Mad Blade Shinta Miao were all present. This was especially the case for Mo Juchen. When he saw Yiguchen's figure, a cold glint flashed across his eyes. He immediately charged towards Yiguchen. On the other side, the 9 Profound Sect's green-clothed sword cultivator, Chen Yi, and Bai Yanji were cultivating here as well. Brother Yi, you really can stir up trouble wherever you go. Bai Yanji smiled bitterly. However, he was not too worried about Yiguchen because the pressure on his physical body was extremely great in the Fortune Gold Pond. It was difficult for him to fight here. Unless one was a true top-notch Heaven's favorite, it would be difficult to even move. In addition, Ji Ling, Bai Zichen, Wang Xiaotian, and the others were all in the inner courtyard of the Sword Sect's forest of pagodas. When they saw Yiguchen, they all had different thoughts. Ji Ling's eyes were filled with joy. Although she knew that Yiguchen was not dead from Yi Xie and the others, she still heaved a sigh of relief when she saw him. As for Bai Zichen, his face instantly darkened. In his eyes, Yiguchen was like a thorn stuck in his throat. He was extremely unhappy. As for Wang Xiaoan and the others, They were all cursing Yi Guchen for not dying. "Yi Guchen, you can't escape." Xianhao's cold and furious voice sounded from behind. Everyone present was able to sense the anger within those words. Why is Xianhao so angry? Many people were puzzled. In their opinion, Xianhao was aloof and looked down on everything. It was rare for him to lose his composure like this. However, Xianhao's reaction caused them to turn their gazes towards Yi Guchen. Could it be that the sword sex Yi Guchen did something shocking again? I think it's possible. Just as everyone was bewildered, Yi Guchen's figure flew directly to the sky above the Fortune Golden Pool. However, before long, Yi Guchen suddenly felt the power of a formation that prevented him from staying in the air. He fell into the golden sea like a bird with broken wings. Behind him, Xianhao and a large group of people also entered the Fortune Golden Pool. As soon as Yi Guchen fell into the Fortune Golden Pool, he felt that the surrounding golden sea water was as viscous as mercury. An overwhelming pressure pressed down on his body. However, at the same time, Yi Guchen could clearly feel that the essence of the golden sea water was seeping into his body through the pressure. Yi Guchen's perfect body had only laid down a perfect foundation. His body still had unlimited potential to continue strengthening. It was just like how a perfect foundation was needed to build a skyscraper. A perfect body was the most perfect foundation. This Fortune Golden Pool is indeed worthy of being a place of opportunity. Yi Guchen was overjoyed instead of being shocked. His body continued to fly towards the depths of the Fortune Golden Pool. The deeper he went, the stronger the effect of the compressed tempering power became. Of course, the pressure also became greater. He looked back. Xianhao, Mo Juechen and the rest were following closely behind him. Other than them, there was also Nieling, Shinta Miao, Jiling, Bai Zichen, Wang Xiaotian and the rest. However, they seemed to want to go deeper to temper their bodies. I heard from Chu Qingqi that if I go deeper into the Fortune Golden Pool, I might be able to obtain a special opportunity, Yi Guchen thought to himself, but he did not slow down. The deeper one went into the Fortune Golden Pool, the greater the pressure. Just the periphery of the Fortune Golden Pool alone was enough to block most of the cultivators. Not long after, Yi Guchen and the rest arrived at the central region. Here, the pressure of the golden seawater was obviously stronger. Even with Yi Guchen's perfect body, cracking sounds could be heard. If he had not swallowed many supreme-grade elixirs to heal his injured body, it would have been difficult for him to hold on. However, Yi Guchen also felt that his current body seemed to be stronger than before. It was not at the Fortune Golden Pool, but at the land of Lightning Tide. After being baptized by the extreme void profound lightning, his body had started a new round of strengthening and transformation. If I go through the baptism of the Fortune Golden Pool, my body will be even stronger. Yi Guchen's eyes lit up. Although he was a sword cultivator, he knew that the body was the foundation of cultivation. It was the foundation. How strong is Yi Guchen's body exactly? Xianhao's eyes darkened behind him. At this place, even he had to use his true qi to help resist the pressure of the golden seawater. Behind him, Mo Juechen and the rest slowed down even more, as if they were gradually approaching their limits. This junior brother is really not simple. Ji Ling's rosy lips revealed a bitter smile. In the inner court, apart from Yan Wushuang, even Bai Zichen would not be able to make Ji Ling feel admiration if he had not left a mark on One Sword Cliff. But now, in Ji Ling's eyes, Yi Guchen's position seemed to be rising higher and higher. Even Ji Ling could not imagine if Yi Guchen would be able to shake Yan Wushuang's position as the first in the inner court if he recovered his cultivation. At this moment, Ji Ling's gaze was extremely complicated. On the other side, Bai Zichen, Wang Xiaotian, and the other geniuses of the inner court were also starting to feel exhausted. Yi Guchen, thought Bai Zichen, his eyes filled with jealousy as he looked at Yi Guchen's back. What virtue and ability does he have to have such talent? Another half an hour passed. Yi Guchen was the first to break through the central region and truly entered the core of the Fortune Golden Pool. As soon as he stepped over the line, Yi Guchen immediately saw waves of golden waves in the distance sweeping over as if they wanted to destroy everything. Even further away, There was something like the sun floating in the air, emitting a dazzling golden light. That's... Yiguchen's eyes suddenly narrowed. Chapter 318. Although there was a long distance between them, Yiguchen could see the sun-like object floating in the air. The object was emitting a golden light. Yiguchen took a closer look and realized that the golden ball of light was actually a ball of liquid. That's right. It was a ball of extremely viscous liquid that seemed to be formed from melted gold. At this moment, a drop of golden liquid would drip down from the lump of golden liquid into the vast golden ocean every few breaths. Could it be? Yiguchen's mind suddenly came up with a conjecture that surprised him. The source of this fortune gold pond was that ball of viscous golden liquid. Perhaps this place was originally a small sea, but because of the golden liquid, drops of it fell into the sea and eventually turned into the golden pool of creation. Just the essence diluted by the seawater has such a strong body tempering effect. What kind of effect does the golden liquid have? At this moment, even Yiguchen's eyes were burning with passion. He knew that the golden liquid was definitely a rare body tempering treasure. Rumble. However, at this moment, the huge golden wave not far away also swept toward Yiguchen. I must get it. Since he had seen such an opportunity, there was no reason to miss it. Yiguchen continued to use his own means. Perfect physique, invincible Vajra body, and various other abilities. Then he moved forward against the golden wave. Boom! The golden wave slammed into Yiguchen like a stampede of 10,000 beasts. The force of the impact pushed Yiguchen back dozens of feet. He spat out a mouthful of blood and his bones trembled. Such power! Yiguchen wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. He took out a supreme-grade healing elixir from the bronze furnace and swallowed it. Although the impact of the golden waves was strong, with each impact, the essence contained in the seawater would seep into Yiguchen's body at a faster rate. Therefore, this was also a kind of opportunity. And for some reason, this golden essence is compatible with my invincible Vajra body, Yiguchen thought to himself. Muscle tendon changing scripture and marrow cleansing scripture were created by one of the top 10 experts in the pugilistic world, first ancestor Bodhidharma. When the two techniques were combined and cultivated to great success, one could cultivate the invincible Vajra body. But was the invincible Vajra body the end? Yiguchen had thought about this before, but this was Bodhidharma's body tempering technique after all. Yiguchen did not have a deep understanding of it. But now that he thought about it, could the invincible Vajra body that Bodhidharma cultivated be a path and not the end? Perhaps the invincible Vajra body is only a foundation, a beginning. This path of body tempering can still be continued. At this moment, Yiguchen was enlightened. He suddenly understood this point and his thoughts became clear. Especially the golden essence in the seawater before him. It seemed to have caused the invincible Vajra body, which had already reached its peak, to show signs of metamorphosis. If I want to know the answer, I have to get that golden liquid. Yiguchen's eyes were clear. Boom, boom, boom. Waves of golden waves slammed towards Yiguchen. Ordinary divine soul realm experts would not be able to withstand the impact and would be blasted away. But Yiguchen's invincible Vajra body seemed to be compatible with the essence of the golden seawater. Even though the waves caused Yiguchen to vomit blood every time, he did not show any signs of retreating. And behind Yiguchen, Xian Hao also stepped into the core of the fortune gold pond. Yiguchen, you can't escape. Xian Hao's true qi burst forth and his soul power was released to resist the golden waves. But he did not have a body tempering technique like the invincible Vajra body, so it was difficult for him to resist. As for Mo Juechen and the rest, Ji Ling, Bai Zichen, Wang Xiaotian and the rest, they were already exhausted and could not enter the core of the fortune gold pond. Damn it! Mo Juechen roared as he split the waves with his blade. But there was nothing he could do. Yiguchen? Ji Ling looked at Yiguchen, who had entered the core, with a bitter smile on the corner of her lips. Aside from Yen Wushuang, Bai Zichen and the rest, she was at the top of the inner courtyard. But here, she could only be considered not bad. Yi Guqin had far surpassed her. As for Bai Zichen, Wang Xiaoyan and the rest, although they were unwilling, there was nothing they could do. Boom, boom, boom. The core of the fortune gold pond. The closer one was to the golden liquid, the higher the frequency of the golden waves. Originally, it was a wave every 15 minutes, but now, it was a wave every 10 breaths. Even Yi Guqin found it difficult to withstand the continuous impact. His bones cracked as blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. If it was not for the elixir in the cauldron and the invincible Vajra body, Yi Guqin would not have been able to persist until here. As for Xian Hao, who was behind him, it was even more difficult for him to endure. Physical body was not Xian Hao's area of expertise. Of course, it did not mean that Xian Hao's physical body was weak. His physical body was definitely stronger than ordinary sky prides, but it could not be compared to Yi Guqin, who had a perfect physical body and the invincible Vajra body. Almost there. I'm almost at my limit. Yi Guqin, although your true qi is crippled, your physical body has indeed shocked me. Xian Hao's eyes were slightly gloomy. Boom. Finally, another golden wave came crashing. Xian Hao's body was blasted back dozens of feet as he spat out blood. On the other hand, Yi Guqin was already close to the golden liquid. 100 feet, 500 feet, 300 feet, 10 feet, boom, boom, boom. At this point, the golden wave seemed to be boiling as it crazily battered Yi Guqin, as if it wanted to push him back. But no matter how much blood Yi Guqin coughed up, no matter how much his physical body shook, he still did not take a single step back. Open for me! Facing the oncoming wave, Yi Guqin's body was overflowing with golden light. He did not use any superfluous techniques. He only activated the invincible Vajra body and used both hands to break through the wave. The vermilion bird wings on his back suddenly spread open. Although there was a restrictive power here, Yi Guqin did not want to fly. He only wanted a moment of impact. His body rose into the air as he grabbed at the golden liquid with one hand. With a plop, Yi Guqin's hand directly broke into the golden liquid. At this moment, Yi Guqin's physical body trembled violently. The invincible Vajra body involuntarily exploded with even more brilliant light, dyeing Yi Guqin's body as if it was cast in gold. That golden liquid also seemed to be alive. It followed Yi Guqin's hand and spread, finally wrapping around his body. In an instant, Yi Guqin's mind suddenly understood. It was as if the clouds had parted to reveal the clear sky. I understand now. So that's how it is. Yi Guqin sighed, unable to hide his joy. He knew what this golden liquid was, and also knew that the invincible Vajra body was not the true limit. Chapter 319. This sun-like golden liquid was called the Golden Body Potion. It was an extremely precious liquid used to refine the body. This kind of precious liquid was very rare and precious. Generally, only the great forces of the South Horizon region had this kind of precious liquid. Generally, it was used to refine the body of their disciples. In the 7 great forces of the Saint Origin dynasty, there was no such precious liquid. However, in ancient times, the Void Sword sect was incomparably prosperous. It was not rare to have such a precious liquid. But the most important thing was that Yi Guqin's invincible Vajra body seemed to have opened a new door after coming into contact with the Golden Body Potion. The invincible Vajra body that seemed to have been cultivated to the extreme seemed to have begun to transform again. And in this change, Yi Guqin also had a kind of enlightenment. The invincible Vajra body was only the first stage of this body refining technique. It seemed to have opened up a path. As for why Bodhidharma did not continue to open up the path, perhaps it was because the world of his previous life was too small and far less vast than this world. But even so, to be able to open up a path was enough to prove Bodhidharma's ability. The surface of the body is golden. It has the ability to be indestructible and can resist spiritual inscriptions. Then what's the next stage? Yi Guqin's eyes were filled with curiosity. He directly sat cross-legged in the center of the core area of the Fortune Golden Pool. Around him, the golden seawater swirled violently as if forming a whirlpool. And the center of the whirlpool was where Yiguchen sat cross-legged. As for the golden body potion, it had completely seeped into Yiguchen's body. Of course, the amount of golden body potion was not small. It was definitely not something that could be consumed and refined in a short time. Yiguchen's invincible Vajra body was being refined by the golden body potion and slowly absorbed it. As for Xian Hao, when the golden whirlpool appeared, he had already been completely blasted out of this area. Yiguchen. Xian Hao took a deep breath, trying to calm his emotions. But the more he tried to calm down, the more the resentment in his heart could not be eliminated. This was inconceivable for Xian Hao, who had always been indifferent and arrogant. Moreover, this would also affect his Dao heart. Yiguchen has gradually become a crack in my heart, an obsession. If I don't get rid of him, then it will only bring disaster to me in the future. Xian Hao took a deep look at the monstrous golden wave at the core. Yiguchen's figure had already been buried. After such a long time, there are only 7 days left before the Void Sword realm closes. I don't believe that you can still stay here and not show up. Xian Hao made up his mind and did not leave. Instead, he chose to stand guard outside the Fortune Golden Pool and wait for Yiguchen to appear. Time trickled by. Yiguchen's invincible Vajra body was gradually transforming under the tempering of the golden body elixir. As for Xian Hao, he was also very patient as he stood guard outside the Fortune Gold Pond. Now, Xian Hao truly regarded Yiguchen as an opponent on the same level, and he no longer underestimated him. And as time went by, it was getting closer and closer to the time when the Void Sword realm would close. The disciples of the 7 major forces in the Sword realm also began to frantically search for opportunities. After all, such an opportunity was very rare, and no one was willing to return empty-handed. And amidst this madness, there was an astonishing piece of news that was like a bolt from the blue, and then like a gust of wind, it swept across the entire Void Sword realm. Someone had obtained the fortune left behind by an expert with a Yuan spirit. This news, like a heavy bomb, made all the elite disciples of the 7 major forces in the Void Sword realm feel their minds rumble. Yuan spirit was a word that was very far away from them. But this did not prevent them from knowing the meaning of a Yuan spirit. Even in the South Sky region, it could be called a true top expert. In the eyes of an expert with a Yuan spirit, even an expert of the Divine Dwelling stage or the Heavenly Palace stage was just like an ant. Of course, they understood it this way because they did not know that Ying Ning's Yuan spirit came from her remarkable ability, the Immortal Soul Pearl. Have you heard? I heard that Yiguchen, Zither Fairy, and Mu Xingzu seem to have obtained the fortune left behind by a Yuan spirit expert. Well, it shouldn't be Yiguchen. Everyone saw him in the Fortune Golden Pool, and some people also saw traces of Zither Fairy. Then only Mu Xingzu is left. Mu Xingzu, you're only in the Qi refining realm. How did you become an inner yard disciple? I heard that she is the disciple of Yiguchen of the Sword Sect. What bullshit disciple? How could such an expert's fortune be taken by a little girl of the Qi refining stage? As the news spread out, the entire Void Sword realm seemed to be boiling. Almost everyone was frantically searching for Mu Xingzu's traces. However, someone leaked the news and exposed the location of the stone bridge. In an instant, almost all the disciples of the 7 major forces who entered the Void Sword realm were like hyenas that smelled meat and rushed towards the stone bridge. However, when they saw the light screen outside the stone bridge, they were even more certain of the authenticity of the news. The news is true, there really is a fortune that belongs to a Yuan spirit expert here. Yiguchen and Zither Fairy are elsewhere. The person who inherited the fortune here must be Mu Xingzu. I'm not convinced. She is only in the Qi refining stage. How can she be qualified to take the fortune left behind by a Yuan spirit expert? More and more people gathered around the stone bridge, and in the end, there were almost 3 layers of people surrounding the place. The fortune left behind by a Yuan spirit expert could be said to be the greatest fortune since the opening of the Void Sword realm. It was no wonder that the disciples of the 7 major forces were so excited. In the end, the news spread to almost everyone in the Void Sword realm. Even Xian Hao, who had been guarding outside the Fortune Golden Pool, received the news. The fortune left behind by a Yuan spirit expert. Even with Xian Hao's temperament, he could not help but be amazed. The king-level sword technique, the bronze elixir furnace, and the extreme void mysterious thunder were all great fortunes. However, compared to the fortune left behind by a Yuan spirit expert, they were slightly inferior. The realm of a Yuan spirit expert is far beyond our imagination. Even if there is only a little bit of fortune left behind, it can be called a great fortune. Xian Hao could not sit still. After thinking for a while, he got up and left the Fortune Golden Pool. Yiguchen, as long as he is still around, the fortune will not run away. I cannot miss the fortune left behind by a Yuan spirit expert. Xian Hao's figure flashed and rushed to the stone bridge. Even Xian Hao could not resist the fortune, which showed how crazy it was. The entire Void Sword realm seemed to be boiling because of it. Everyone's suspicions were all pointing towards one person, Mu Xingzhu. As for the entire Void Sword realm, the only person who had not received the news was Yi Guchen, who was sitting cross-legged at the core of the Fortune Golden Pool and being refined by the golden body liquid. After a long silence, Yi Guchen finally opened his eyes. The moment he opened his eyes, a huge golden wave surged and swept in all directions. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.